Welcome, everyone, to the October 14th, 2021 School Board meeting of the Pleasanton Unified School District. Won't you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. October, it's fall, super awesome. So tonight I'd like to do a few welcomes before we get started on our agenda. To my right is Dr. David Haglund. He's our superintendent of schools. My name is Joan Larson. I am serving as the president this year. To my left is trustee Mark Miller, who is serving as the vice president. Then we have trustee Steve Maher, trustee Sachi Bayani, trustee Kelly Makashi, and trustee Mary Jo Carrion up here on the dais. Down in the room, we have our cabinet who are joining us. We have Dr. Janelle Woodward, our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, Mr. Ed Dialazo, our assistant superintendent of student support services, Mr. Julio Hernandez, our assistant superintendent of human resources, Mr. Hamad Sheikh-Al-Islami, our assistant superintendent of business services, and Mr. Patrick Gannon, who is our coordinator of community engagement and communication. And I'd also like to welcome via Zoom our representative from Middle College tonight, our student representative, Abby House. Is she going to wave on the Zoom? No? Okay. So for our action in closed session tonight, I do need to mention that item number A1 was pulled, but I'm pleased to report item number A2, the appointment of the administrative assistant for student support services. The board unanimously appointed Becky Simons. Becky, are you with us tonight?
I am. Good evening, Dr. Haglund, Board of Trustees and Cabinet. Thank you for having me. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I've worked quite a bit with student services over the past 4.5 years while I was working at Donlin, and I'm just excited to join the student support services team and work with our assistant superintendent, Mr. Dialazo.
Great. Well, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
The other item to report out of closed session, we actually will be voting on, let me make sure I've got this correctly. That's correct. No other action was taken in closed, but we do have item number 4B, student discipline. This is an expulsion recommendation for case number 2021.2022.002. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the stipulated expulsion case number 2021.2022.002.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for the to approve the expulsion recommendation, case number 2021-2022.002. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee Makashi?
Aye.
Trustee Bayani?
Abstain.
Trustee Maher?
Aye.
Trustee Miller? And I as well. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the approval of our agenda. Are there any items needing to be pulled from the agenda this evening? Otherwise, I'll seek a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson, aye. All right. I'm so happy to note that tonight, in our item number 6, we have a recognition and introductions. Dr. Haglund.
We do, and for our first character trait recognition for the year, responsibility, I'd like to hand it over, I think, to Mr. Dialazo. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund, and good evening to you. Good evening, President Larson, Board of Trustees, Cabinet staff, and community. This is always a fun agenda item for me and hopefully for all of you. So throughout the year, we recognize students during the board meeting who demonstrate one of the 6 identified Pleasanton Community of Character traits. The traits include compassion, honesty, respect, responsibility, integrity, and self-discipline. This evening, we're recognizing students who were nominated by school staff for demonstrating the character trait of responsibility. Students who demonstrate this trait are recognized for being accountable for their choices, doing what they say they're supposed to do, and always doing their best. So we want to thank our students for their hard work at school and their outstanding character. So tonight, award winners are being recognized from Walnut Grove Elementary School, Moore Elementary, Hart Middle School, and Foothill High School. Now I'd like to introduce our student board member, Trustee Sachi Bayani, from Foothill, who will read the nominations of our students. And then students, if you're on the call, when Trustee Bayani reads your name, please say hello so we can see you on the monitor. So I will now turn it over to Trustee Bayani.
Thank you, Mr. Dialazzo. So first up is Rishik Samadar in second grade. He was nominated by Mrs. Coslow and Mrs. Delot's class. Rishik goes above and beyond in our second grade class. Rishik takes responsibility for his school materials, learning, and choices. He even goes out of his way to help his fellow classmates because that is the kind of person he is and works hard to be. Congratulations, Rishik.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Got them all up there.
Next, we have Marin Padthare in fourth grade. She was nominated by Mrs. Perazzo's class. Marin is an exemplary student who takes responsibility for herself, her education, and the welfare of others. She is a gracious and understanding individual, seeking to help when others are in need and showing leadership qualities when working collaboratively. Continue to shine, Marin. Are you there? Now we'd like to recognize 3 students from Moore Elementary. First up, we have Shashank Iyer in third grade. Shashank was nominated by Mrs. Jones. Shashank demonstrates responsibility on a daily basis. He completes all assignments on time and to the best of his ability. Shashank consistently follows directions after the first time being asked and is proactive when he has not been given specific instructions. Shashank gives kind reminders to other students when they are not on task and makes good choices all throughout the day. No, Shashank? Well, congratulations anyway. Next up, we have Tony Vateb in 5th grade. Tony was nominated by Mrs. Chappelle. Tony takes responsibility for his learning. He asks probing questions whether to clarify his understanding or to add to our classroom discussions. I have seen Tony make tremendous growth in taking responsibilities for his actions while learning and working with others. Congratulations, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Next up from Moore, we have Aiden Safta, who's in 5th grade. Aiden was nominated by Mrs. Chappelle as well. Aiden is very responsible. He helped a boy go to the office when he was hurt and picked up a ball when it rolled away and did not kick it. He also picked up another girl's trash and put it in the trash. Great job, Aiden.
Always waving.
Congratulations. Keep up the good work, Aiden. At the middle school level, we will be recognizing 3 students from Hart. First up is Ani Yakanti in 7th grade. Ani was nominated by Mrs. Stacy Alcorn. Ani has exhibited extreme responsibility as we have started out this year. Ani works hard in both of our block classes together, advocates for himself in seeking clarifications that benefit the whole class, and he clearly manages his time well. We're so lucky to have Ani as a role model in our district.
Hi.
Next up, we have Angela Titus in 7th grade. She was nominated by Mrs. Brittany Hill. Angela has shown the character trait of responsibility all year long, and it does not go unnoticed. She always completes her assignments and is incredibly inclusive to other students in class, and is such a hard worker. Thank you, Angela. Angela, you there? Well, congratulations anyway. Next up for Hart, we have Mina Fu, who is currently in 8th grade. She was nominated by Mrs. Ali Orsi Davis. Mina does a fantastic job leading her group in 8th grade science. She provides a responsible, inquisitive example for others to follow and will make a fantastic scientist in the future. Mina brings out the maturity in others, which is always vital in middle school. Her respectful attitude towards both her peers and her teachers is appreciated by all. Way to go, Mina.
Hello.
Hello, congratulations. At the high school level, we will be recognizing 5 students from Foothill. We would first like to recognize Brady Holderin in the 10th grade. Brady was nominated by Mr. Ken Kuzo. Brady came into my classroom with a cell phone he found on one of the picnic tables on campus during passing period. He checked in to ask me if it was okay to be a couple minutes tardy so that he could take it to the office right away in case the student was looking for it. Thank you, Brady.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Eric Kerr in grade 11. Eric was nominated by multiple staff members at Foothill. Eric Kerr demonstrates responsibility in his everyday life at Foothill. Nearly every weekend in the fall, he presents a welcoming face and professional attitude to all patrons of the Foothill football games as a cashier in our snack shack. He is also always looking out for the greater good on campus and trying to help make Foothill a safer, more inclusive environment. We are very proud of you, Eric.
Thank you.
Next, we have Maya Etwaru in grade 12. Maya was nominated by Mr. Zach Littman. Maya is a student who comes to class every day prepared and always actively participates. She also takes care of her classmates if any of them need supplies or help. I've been fortunate enough to have her last year, and this year, and have seen a student who acts responsible every class, every day, every year. Congratulations, Maya. Lastly, for this evening for Foothill, we have Pippa Hodgins and Samantha Lim, both in grade 12. Pippa and Samantha were nominated by Mr. Norrington and Mr. Bull. Without being prompted, Pippa and Samantha took their own time to help clean up after lunch. Not only did they take care of a few tables that were on their path to class, but they came back to another area to help clean up after some students who had not cleaned up their own items. We always appreciate them taking care of Foothill's campus.
Thank you. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to throw it back to Mr. Dialazzo.
All right, thank you, Trustee Bayani, and students, thank you so much for joining us tonight and really showing us how you embody the character trait of responsibility throughout your schools and throughout the school year. So we will be sending you your certificates to your schools, and your teachers or administrators will be handing them to you. So congratulations again, and since it is a school night, feel free to log off, students. And it's really good, really good to see all of your faces. Thank you again.
Hi, this is Mangesh, Mrinmay's dad. We had internet connection problem. Did you take Mrinmay's name, the first or second place, somewhere?
How old is she?
She's in fourth grade.
4th grade. Oh, I have it right here. Yeah, I can read it out loud again. So Maureen was nominated by Mrs. Peraza's class. Maureen is an exemplary student who takes responsibility for herself, her education, and the welfare of others. She is a gracious and understanding individual, seeking to help when others are in need, and showing leadership qualities when working collaboratively. Continue to shine, Maureen.
Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations to all the students. Thank you, Dr. Haglund.
Congratulations. And I would like to thank the teachers and administrators who take the time to submit the recommendations. It really is one of the most enjoyable parts of our board meetings, and our community, I know, loves to hear about all of the good things our students are doing. So thank you for taking the time to do that. With that, we'll move on to item number 7. It's where we hear from representatives from our associations. So Michelle Verkeilen, President of Association of Pleasanton Teachers.
Good evening, President Larson, members of the board, Dr. Haglund, members of the cabinet, and our community. Pleasanton students and staff deserve the best, and we are APT. I am Michelle Verkeilen, the proud president of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. I have been here this evening with hundreds of APT members, our Tri-Valley partners from Dublin and San Ramon, community supporters, and others in our California Teachers Association family. APT members have been advocating for smaller class sizes and caseloads, individualized support for special education students, and retaining and recruiting the best educators with competitive compensation. A student-centered approach involves meeting every student where they are and keeping them a priority on all fronts. However, PUSD management has unilaterally implemented several of its divisive proposals, such as increasing the duty day and instructional minutes for high school educators without pay, and wanting to take away and dictate the 30-minute duty-free lunch for educators. Pleasanton students deserve the best, and we hope that district management recognizes that we provide the high level of education PUSD prides itself on. The sacrifices, effort, and the above and beyond work that we continue to do should not just be met with occasional words of appreciation, but with actions that truly support our students and give us a return for the work that we have done and continue to do. APT is hopeful we will have a productive fact-finding hearing and that PUSD management chooses to invest in their students and educators. However, it is going to take PUSD management to willingly partner with us to help make a student-centered agreement happen. Thank you to all who showed up today to support our students. And when we stand together, we win together.
Support our students! 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 Support our students!
All right, thank you. And now from the California School Employees Association, Mr. Derek Busaros.
Thank you. Good evening, President Larson, Superintendent Haglund, the leadership, students, staff, and community of Pleasanton Unified. The privilege of this platform is typically used to focus praise or address concerns of the bargaining unit I represent. Today, I think it is important to dedicate my time to our teachers. Every person in the educational world knows that the first principle of presenting our civic ideals is to model the behavior we want to see. We say good morning, we throw our trash away, and we behave politely even when we don't want to, because the impressionable young people around us are most, guided by our actions, not always our slogans or our ideals. I understand that PUSD has a great opportunity to model for our youth the value of a teacher. What are our guiding principles when it comes to the value of education? What is the value of the individual who gives themselves to a daily demanding performance before dozens or hundreds of young minds in a constant state of absorption, rejection, passion, and apathy? However these people are treated reflects not only our value of the institution, but by proxy, those who benefit from it. In the coming weeks, please model for our youth the value of these professionals who represent our community, our district, and on a daily basis, the student body itself. Next month, I'll be happy to return to the celebration, the needs, and the focus of the classified staff, but today is about our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 8, which is public comments from the community for items not on our agenda. Mr. Gannon, I don't see any on our list. Do you have any that I'm not aware of?
No, President Larson, we do not have public comments.
All right, thank you. Now on to our high school representative report, which tonight is from Middle College, Abby House. Abby, are you with us tonight?
She was just promoted to a panelist. She'll be here in a second.
Right, one moment, please.
Hi.
Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Haglund, President Larson, members of the board and executive cabinet. My name is Abby House, and I am the student board representative for the Middle College program at Las Positas College. I'm so excited to be the student representative for our program. Middle College has started the school year with 140 students from our 3 partner districts, Pleasanton, Dublin, and Livermore Valley Joint Unified School Districts. Our 70 juniors and 70 seniors are happy to be back on the college campus full-time for our 3 high school classes and are enjoying our new classrooms in the newly constructed Las Positas classroom building. Inside the classroom, our juniors are currently studying the American Revolutionary War in U.S. history and transcendentalism in American literature in junior English. In economics, our seniors are discussing the basic principles of supply and demand and beginning a unit on the stock market. while learning about ethos, pathos, and logos in our expository reading and writing course. Both juniors and seniors are using the AVID class to help with the transition from high school to college. With many of the college courses still online, we are excited to have AVID tutors this year. We are able to have current seniors tutor our juniors and recent middle college graduates tutor our seniors. Many of my fellow senior classmates are applying to four-year colleges, while many others are planning to continue at Las Positas College after graduation before transferring. With middle college making up the majority of the on-campus students this fall, many middle college students are continuing with activities at their home high schools. We have students running cross-country, playing football, marching in the band, cheerleading, and on dance team, as well as various clubs and organizations across the high schools. Looking forward to spring semester, we are beginning the registration process for college classes, and LPC is anticipating at least 60% of their classes in person. We are looking forward to experiencing a busy campus once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. That was a lot of activity going on, and I loved hearing the numbers go up for this program. It's great news. Dr. Hagelin, your superintendent's report, item number 10.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Hart Middle School and Walnut Grove Elementary School students for the vibrant artwork that's hanging in the boardroom tonight and in our district lobby. Nice work, Huskies and Roadrunners. We certainly appreciate your artistic talents. This community is fortunate to have an experienced team of remarkable and inspiring certificated and classified administrators that work each day to support students, staff, and families. Our leadership team's passion, dedication, and tireless efforts to collaborate with certificated and classified staff, as well as our parents and guardians, students, and community members, has never been more evident. Over the past 2 years, we have witnessed their steadfast, kind, and thoughtful approaches to a very difficult leadership opportunity. They leaned in and stepped up whenever and wherever there was a need, and there were plenty to choose from these last 2 years. It was their sense of focus and purpose that enabled our work to reopen schools safely in August and to welcome students back to our campuses. It's a privilege to serve our community alongside this amazing group of professionals. At our last meeting, this board approved a resolution recognizing October 10th through the 16th as the Week of the Administrators. I wanted to encourage members of the community tonight, if you haven't already done so, to reach out to one of PUSD's leaders and extend your appreciation for the immeasurable difference they continue to make in the lives of Pleasanton's students, staff, and families. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take a little bit of time to go through my next part, so it may take a few minutes, and I apologize for that.
Sounds good.
This week, the members of the team and I attended a workshop presented by School Services of California and FCMAT on the impact of declining enrollment in California. Given the unrest we're experiencing locally around our conservative approach to the budget, I thought it was important to share some details with you and with the community tonight. Historically, California's economy and funding for its schools benefited by periods of sustained population and economic growth, but those trends have shifted in recent years. In 2020, the population in California fell by 182,000, more than 182,000 people. Low birth rates and net negative migration has left more than half of California's school districts facing declining student enrollment, some, like here in Pleasanton, for the very first time. This, coupled with the impact of the pandemic, has made forecasting a challenge throughout the state. One key growth indicator used by districts in planning is kindergarten enrollment. Kinder enrollment in California has averaged between 8.5 and 8.6% of the total K-12 student population for the past 5 years. This year, that dropped to 7.7%. In Pleasanton, the kinder enrollment was 962, or 6.5% in 2010-11, and has since dropped to 5.5% this current year. Because this is happening at the same time we are working our way out of a global pandemic, It's difficult to know how much of the drop is related to declining enrollment and how much is linked to the pandemic. In either case, we need to be thoughtful in our forward planning. When COVID hit, the state implemented a hold harmless approach to funding enrollment, locking in numbers from the 2019-2020 school year. In a way, the hold harmless concept was both a blessing and a curse. While the approach ensured that consistent funding was provided to the district based on the 2019-2020 enrollment, which was at that time 14,878, it also masked the impact of declining enrollment. As the hold harmless ends this year, the district's funding will realign with the actual 2021-2022 enrollment of 14,092, driving a correlated reduction in state funding in the 22-23 school year of approximately $7 million. The state and federal application of significant one-time COVID mitigation funds further mask the impact of declining enrollment for us. While those monies helped us to reopen schools safely, secure needed technology and PPE, and to begin to address learning loss associated with the pandemic, the one-time nature of these funds limited their use to non-ongoing functions. The state's hold harmless and the influx of one-time COVID relief funds only delayed, it did not relieve our budget problems, including those tied to the current negotiations. As we move forward, it's important that we continue to be honest and transparent with our budget processes, including with both internal and external stakeholders. We need to acknowledge and plan for the impact of declining enrollment and consider the effects of declining enrollment on both resources and programs. We need to formulate, communicate, and implement plans to address these enrollment losses, and then, as a board, take decisive action to adjust spending and operations to compensate for the lower revenues. Waiting several months or a year to make budget reductions will cause budget problems to multiply and be more difficult to resolve. And one thing that Mike said that really stuck with me, Mike Fine, the director of FitMec, said on the call, the depth and the pain experienced by a district in declining enrollment is directly related to how long they wait to begin to address the issue. So I know that's not an exciting update from the superintendent. I do hope that it lays the groundwork for the work that we need to do as a governance team over the course of this next few months. And Mr. Sheikho Salami will be providing a more detailed report in the coming months. So that's my report tonight.
Thank you. I too was on the call and made that same note. Yes, it's sobering to look at the effects of this throughout the county and the state as part of what I do in my day job. So thank you for that report. We'll move on now to item number 11, our consent agenda. These are routine matters that typically are approved with one vote. But if there's a board member who wishes to pull an item for discussion.
I'd like to pull item B just to make a comment. So if there's no other adjustments, I can make a motion to approve the consent calendar except for item B.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item number B. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher? Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. All right, Trustee Makashi.
So this week when I was reviewing the personnel document, I felt compelled to make an acknowledgement to acknowledge the workability program for 23 students who will have job opportunities. I'm sure Ed Dialazzo or Dr. Hagelin can explain a little bit more about the program, but it's basically allowing for students with special needs to have job opportunities and working within the community. And I just think that this is an amazing program and really wanted to acknowledge the assignment of those students for their job opportunities.
Great, thank you. That program is typically supported with federal dollars, and we're grateful for that and the students for the opportunities. So would you like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve approval of the personnel document.
Second that one as well.
Great, moved and seconded to approve item B, the personnel document. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And aye, Larson. All right. Now we'll move on to the report, discussion, and possible action items for this evening. The first item is A, report, discussion, and possible action on ESSER 3 plan. Dr. Woodward?
Yes. Good evening, President Larson, trustees, Superintendent Haglund, Cabinet, and members of the Pleasanton community. School districts, county offices of education, or charter schools, collectively known as LEAs, that receive elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, what we call ESSER, under the American Rescue Plan, are required to develop plans for how they will use the ESSER 3 funds. In the plans, the districts must explain how it intends to use these funds to address students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs, as well as any opportunity gaps that existed before and were worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. An LEA or district may also use the ESSER 3 funds in other ways to implement additional actions to address students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs, as well as to address opportunity gaps, consistent with the allowable uses identified in the fiscal plan requirements. In developing the plan, the district may include community input and actions considered in other planning documents, for example, the LCAP plan, or other pandemic-related funding sources, provided that the input and actions are relevant to the district's plan to support students. I'd like to introduce Dr. Pam Vandekamp, the Director of Assessment and Accountability, who will present tonight's report.
Good evening, President Larson, members of the Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Haglund, members of the Cabinet, and Pleasanton community. I'm here tonight to share with you our plan to use funding provided by the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. As always, our work is grounded in our district organizational goals, which the board recently adopted. For this presentation, I would like to highlight Goal 2 and Goal 5. Here's a brief recap of the funding that PUSD has received to address the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and statewide shelter in place. As you can see here the funding deadlines and the awarded amounts. A number of these funds have already been expended in full, with funds remaining in our Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant and our in-person instruction grant. I would like to point out the typographical error for the amount of funding for ESSER 3. The amount of funding is $2,116,723. Similar to other pandemic-related funding, this money is intended to address the impacts of the past 18 months on our schools, on our students, and their learning. A minimum of 20% must be used to address the academic impact of lost instructional time. Community engagement is an important component of the plan development, and districts are allowed to use community feedback from previous plans, including our Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant and our Local Control Accountability Plan. Pleasanton engaged in extensive and robust community engagement in spring 2021 around the planning and the funding that was available at that time. In addition, feedback was elicited this fall from a variety of community stakeholder groups, including our foster and kinship families, our African American Family Network, our District English Learner Advisory Council, and our Local Control Advisory Committee. Following a presentation about the funding and services and actions that we are already providing, participants were asked to respond to the thought exchange prompts noted here. Our top thoughts really focused on specific actions needed to support our students. And as you can see, the top thought was around making decisions based on the needs of students, which is the requirement of the plan. The responses and the ratings that were provided in our thought exchange were analyzed, and they were grouped based on the level of implementation of the suggested ideas. The majority of the thoughts indicated actions and services that are already in place in our district. Based on feedback gathered both in the spring and fall of 2021, the funding was allocated to the required categories as shown here. So these are the 3 required categories of the plan. In the area of strategies for continuous and safe in-person learning, actions and services are aligned with our in-person instruction grant with the goal of extending or expanding existing services, including elements around testing and tracing, our ventilation, and then providing staffing and support for our schools. In the area of addressing academic impacts, actions and services are aligned with our local control accountability plan and our expanded learning opportunity grant actions and services. Thinking about that lost instructional time, providing after school, Saturday and summer opportunities, our professional development, ways to support our student mental health and wellness, and then also support for our emerging bilingual students. Additional activities focus on the expansion of the Pleasanton Virtual Academy, which has been impacted by the ongoing effects of the pandemic and is outlined in our expanded learning opportunities grant. An important point to keep in mind is that the use of the funds is subject to change based on specific needs of our students. This is built into the plan, knowing how circumstances have shifted throughout the pandemic. The grant also requires progress monitoring tools, and those described here provide ongoing sources of data, both around academic achievement and social emotional growth and changes. The progress monitoring tools are not limited to the ones described here and can include other data points as well. The next steps for our plan are our presentation tonight and our opportunity to gather feedback from the Board of Trustees, which can be incorporated into our ESSER 3 plan. Then the plan will be submitted to the Alameda County Office of Education, and we have a staff member assigned to our district to review the plan and provide any feedback. During the month of November, they will review all of the submissions from districts around the county, and then by December 17th, they'll issue any clarifying questions. And this is a very similar process to the one that we follow for our local control accountability plan. We have until January 7th to provide responses to their clarifying questions, and then the county office will submit an approved ESSER plan to the California Department of Education. So if you have any questions at this time, I'd be happy to provide answers.
Other questions? Trustee Carrion.
So I have had the great opportunity to be volunteering in schools for the starting the last couple of weeks, and I've noticed that there is a huge gap. I've noticed that behavioral-wise, there's a lot of students that are struggling with attention and staying on task, and I've seen a lot of students way behind. And so one of the things that I also noticed was in this report, it said parents, one of the feedback was aids. So I would like to see a lot more aids and interventions in the schools. And I know later on today we're going to be having a presentation on the math program. It would be nice to have like a math intervention specialist, or even have each school come up with like how much, I mean, it says only $50,000. I think we need a lot more money designated to actual people on campus. And that could also include more lunchtime aids? Because I know when I was there, kids are struggling sitting at the same table with the same group of people all lunch because they want to be with their friends. So my question is how do we get more people in this plan?
I think that we can always take all of the feedback from the board as we develop the plan. And as I said, it's something that can change as well as continuing needs are identified.
Trustee McCosh?
So just to be clear, I want to make sure that you get a solid answer to that question. I wasn't sure if that happened yet. So let me try. The purpose tonight is to allocate funds into, I'll call them buckets, based on the feedback that we collected from the families, the teachers, the students, and so on in the feedback cycle. We shared with all the stakeholders at that time and with the board during other processes that these reports they live. So if there was a desire to do additional staffing and we wanted to move money from one bucket to another bucket, we can do that within the construction of the plan. We don't have to add everything to the plan and have it perfect when it's submitted on the 29th. So know that your thought is heard and that we can have conversations and look into ideas that would make that work. We don't have to resubmit the plan necessarily. At some point in time, we'll submit an update, but we can make those kinds of adjustments. I don't want to say on the fly because that sounds like we're not being serious about it, but if there's clear direction from the board or clear need at a particular school, we have some flexibility even within the construction of the plan.
Mr. Hernandez?
Dr. Haglund, if I may add, to hopefully help with the answer, we have had 2 classified job fairs to specifically hire classified staff, and we did manage to hire 12 paraeducators. We did manage also to hire campus supervisors. So we are working with our site staff to be able to improve the noon duty supervisors and supervision to our schools. That is a continuous effort that we're engaged in. I believe what Dr. Haglund is suggesting is that there is pots of money that can be allocated to personnel that would facilitate paying more of this additional staff. But again, we are actively engaged in finding and hiring and assigning supervision staff by multiple avenues for our school sites. If there's a specific need at a school that you've been volunteering at, we can engage the administrator at that site to be able to address those concerns.
So if they have a concern, they would email you, or who would they?
They could either reach out to Dr. Woodward or myself, and we have a coordinated effort in ensuring that our students are safe and that there is supervision out there. Given, again, we have added more supervision due to the need to have the COVID response with contact tracing, which Mr. D'Alonzo is also involved in his division.
So 2 clarifiers, if I may. I always think it's a great suggestion for teachers to talk to their principal first and collaborate with the principal and the teacher can reach out to Dr. Woodward so that we're not, circling around the decision, if you know what I mean. So I would encourage them to talk to the principal first and try to work forward a plan. The other thing is I want to make sure, and this kind of goes back to what I said in my superintendent's report, that these are one-time dollars that will be a temporary fix. And so that's an appropriate use of the dollar. What you suggested is an appropriate use of the dollars, but we would want that to be coordinated with the principals at the school sites.
I'm just clarifying though, because it says only $50,000. I mean, is some way that we can increase that, or?
We certainly could move from other buckets that are larger. We could move dollars into that bucket if that was the desire.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Trustee McCoshie? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
I'll let Trustee Maher go first.
All right, Trustee Maher and then Trustee Bayani.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee McCoshie. I was fortunate enough today that I was visiting the Wellness Center at Foothill, and very impressed, Mr. D'Alonzo, about what it looked like, how they were serving students. The biggest concern that they had, and they expressed it for Amador also, is that sometimes counselors cannot be there because they're working with students or they're in and out of classrooms and so forth. They try to be. But they were telling me that Amador is only in operation 3 days a week, certain time limits because of someone to man it. What I'm asking is, Dr. Vandekamp, again, what Dr. Hagen was saying, when I look at the money that's funded in that area, if the principal feels that a classified person could be in that center to take notes, to take attendance, to write passes, that would free up counselors' work with students. Is that something that is viable if the principal comes forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And just going back to what Dr. Haglund said, if those ideas can be brought to the principal to think about how do we staff this, and you could see the language right in this ESSER plan is to hire more staff to oversee the wellness centers at both high schools. So we're right on the same page. I've heard the same concerns, so we will collaborate together with the principal after he gathers some information to try and figure out a strategy to staff the program.
I guess the last thing I would ask is the $100,000 that's in that category, it's not spoken already for already or anything, or is it as we move forward, or?
Not yet. I think there are ideas of how to possibly staff the program and how to build it, the framework of it, and or even structurally or even physically. That was some of the ideas, but really the staffing and how to really provide the opportunity for students on a daily basis, not the 3 days a week or part of the day, but really to staff it so that it is functional and useful for the students
I
every
can tell you it was very impressive, and I thank you for going off in this direction because it's much needed, especially now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do realize the funds are limited and they don't carry over to possibly next year, as Dr. Haglund was saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for this year, maybe we could use it, and what happens next year.
Yeah, I will definitely follow up with the principals.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Bayani?
First of all, fantastic job, Dr. Vandekamp. I love how you broke everything off with the LCAP because LCAP is very important. And to add on to what Mr. Maher was saying, especially about the Family Health and Wellness Center, is there any plans to move this onto the middle schools? Because I'm at Foothill, and when the Wellness Center was open my freshman, sophomore year, it was like my favorite place to be during Flex because I could color there. There were beanbag chairs.
Right.
We had dogs to come in. It was pretty fun.
That's right.
And especially with the pandemic, I'm sure middle schoolers also now need this too, and maybe elementary schoolers. So is it possible to use some of this funding for wellness centers at the other school sites?
I'll defer to Mr. Dialazzo on that question.
I was just about to answer it, and please, my colleagues, if anybody has anything to add. So the quick answer is absolutely. So we want to make sure that we strengthen what we currently have, because we have it at both of our high schools, the two comprehensive high schools. So we want to, it's not unlimited funds, so we kind of want to see how we can strengthen and really bolster the two high school programs. And then as we learn more about, like, what is this program? What are the resources that we can provide? Who are the people that can staff it? Definitely middle schools, even elementary schools at some point, possibly. Again, funds are limited, but if we feel as a district this is a strategy to strengthen at the lower level, grade levels, I'm all in, absolutely. Thank you.
Of course. Another question I had is on the funds being used for the additional actions. I noticed there was around $250,000 for technology, especially I noticed the one-to-one device distribution. So I was wondering why we aren't choosing to use the Measure I-1 funds, which are traditionally used for the device distribution.
So I'll defer to Mr. Sheikh al-Islami on that one.
Great. Great question. I think that one thing that I would say is that when we look at the three different categories and funding that's been allowed, we have the ESSER funds, we have the expanded learning opportunity funds, and we have the in-person. A lot of these have different requirements, and some of them are more restrictive and some of them are less restrictive. When we developed both the in-person and the e-log, we were under a lot of time constraints that it was to be spent down by the end of the summer of 2022. Since then, they've made some adjustments to that and allowed for a longer duration of spending. So a lot of the programs that the board members have brought up and others are in other categories, and we're going to be looking at it. We looked at the ESSER 3 funds as the ability to extend the timeline of some of the other programs that we have and dollars that we've allocated. So under the Extended Learning Opportunity Plan, the district is spending close to, I believe, $500,000 on different digital software and devices that are supporting current programs. And so our goal is really to extend some of the most critical ones into the outer years. So that's why it's a broad category, but mainly will probably go towards the digital software devices.
Thank you so much. And one more question. For the ensuring interventions slide, you guys mentioned the MAP growth assessment. I was curious how accurate this assessment actually was, because probably shouldn't be saying this, but when all the high school kids took the MAP growth assessment, we kind of did about 15 minutes of it and then started putting random answers in it because we didn't want to take a test. So I figured those results aren't the most accurate. So is this just only a high school thing or a middle school thing? How are we ensuring that the MAP growth assessments are actually accurate and kids are not just being lazy?
So for the high school in particular, the assessment was intended to be kind of a replacement for CAST because we didn't have CAST last year. So we needed to provide something for our 11th graders, and that's why we chose that. And we worked with the teachers to help them to support their students in taking it seriously. The results are connected to things like the state seal of biliteracy. So we will be looking at those results in terms of that achievement. But for our students in grades 2 through 8 in math, and 3 through 8 in reading, the principals have done extensive work looking at the results of the assessment, measuring student growth over time, and we have some students who have taken this for a number of years, so we're really able to see their achievement over time. Teachers are using the assessment results also to inform their instruction and focus on essential standards in their classroom. So I'm sorry that your experience was that, but I think we've really worked hard over the last couple of years to use the information to inform instruction, to look at programs, how we're using it for program development, school-wide and both at the grade level and classroom level.
That's really good to hear. Thank you so much, Dr. Vandekamp.
And just to follow up, Sachi, I will be providing a presentation on the MAP growth assessment results in November. So you'll learn more then.
That's great. Thank you.
So, but Pam, I know in elementary, if a child is doing that, the teacher has the ability to stop them and have them redo that. Do they have the same thing in the high school?
It does. It should. There is a rapid guessing element in the assessment, and what it will do is it will stop the assessment, and the teacher has to restart it. Actually, experienced that with a second grader a couple weeks ago. So it should be doing that, and I know that also did happen and sometimes at the high school level. So they shouldn't. It really checks if you're just clicking through the assessment. It will stop you, and then the teacher will have to reset it. Thanks.
Historically, we've had a very high compliance rate for our students taking our standardized testing. So it's interesting that this different model might have a little bit of a different interface, and we might be experiencing a little bit of change in how seriously the high school students take it. So that's interesting. Trustee Makashi.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Could you talk a little bit about the Newcomer Academy for those who might not be familiar with that? It's on the slide where it talks about $100,000 slated for the Newcomer Academy, as well as the other bucket there is the expanded supplemental curriculum professional development for designated ELD.
Thank you. So our Newcomer Academy is something that is in the kind of the infancy, and it's connected to our Saturday Academy. Coordinator Mather has been working on this together with Student Support Services. It really focuses on students with limited or interrupted formal education. So what we are seeing and we're hearing from our principals and our teachers is that students are coming to their classroom with little or no English, but they also don't have much formal education in their own language. And so we want to provide opportunities to support them in learning English and being able to assimilate into our learning system, our education system, both in the United States and especially in Pleasanton. And so recently, as part of the Saturday Academy, they had a number of secondary and elementary students who came in, and they were learning about how to greet each other, how to ask, how are you doing? Learning a little bit about what instruction looks like in our community. And so it's a really needed element in our instructional community instructional practices. And then the professional development for our emerging bilinguals, especially around designated English language development. Designated English language development is a required part of the day. It's a protected part of the day for our emerging bilingual students who are learning English. And so what we want to do is provide the best resources for our teachers. So we have 23 teachers currently in 3rd through 5th grade who are participating in this professional development. And we're focusing on that group in particular because our K through 2 teachers are working with Director Galletti on the LETTERS program. Our secondary students are really focusing on the grading for equity model. And so we wanted to provide opportunity for professional development for our 3rd through 5th grade teachers. So these are teachers who are providing that designated ELD, that protected time within their grade level at their school site. And they are learning about the theories of language acquisition, what that looks like for our students, and then what are strategies that they can use in the classroom to support our students in learning kind of the bricks and mortar of language. When we build a house, we want to have bricks and mortar. When we're developing the English language, we want to do that as well. What is the function and form of language? What is the vocabulary elements? And so they have designed a curriculum to support those strategies, and we've made that available to the teachers as well.
Okay, thank you.
And so really that, I'm sorry, I just want to make that, we want to extend that funding so that we can extend this program to our secondary teachers. We were just on a call this week with our steering committee, and that was a question as well. Are we going to be able to extend some of this professional development to our secondary teachers? And we'd like to do that, and this additional funding will support that.
Okay, great, thank you. So that provides a lot of clarification, and I think a very important area to focus on when we think about post-pandemic and a lot of students who may have been impacted without being in school. I do have another question as it relates to the independent study program and the Pleasanton Virtual Academy. Could someone explain a little bit more about the thinking behind the $1.2 million focused around additional funding around that, and what that will include or what that might look like?
Pam, I'll take that one.
Okay.
No problem. No problem. So when the state put together both the in-person grant and the ELO plan, Extended Learning Opportunity Grant, they did not, at that time, the independent study requirements were not in play. And we also didn't have the resurgence of COVID with the Delta. And so at that time, when the board approved the Pleasanton Virtual Academy, it was envisioned to be about a 250 student program. It was also envisioned to be more towards the secondary schools. And so we allocated general fund dollars and some extended learning opportunity grant money related to credit recovery. And so once the state then required to have this program and these resurgence of Delta virus, the program has now doubled to over 400 students. And so we've had to allocate additional staffing, and that's put a lot of pressure on our general fund. And so we've identified the ESSER 3 as being the more flexible funding to allow us to support this program this year with the additional staffing and expenses, and that next year we hopefully go back to more of a normal operation for that program. The other challenge with that program has been that students can go between the programs, between independent study and the general in-person. And so to be able to right-size staffing has been a challenge. And so although we have moved some staffing, We have not been able to right-size it because of some of those complexities that existed in that, currently that's going on with the program. So those dollars are intended to support the program, release pressure on the general fund so that we can calibrate the coming year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So just so I understand right, will it primarily cover staffing from what you're saying because of the increased enrollment into the virtual academy?
Correct. It is mainly it's a very staff-intensive program. I think we have maybe 18 certificated staff in that program. And so, yes, that money is mainly for our staff.
So I have that data. So at the last snapshot, we had 419 students enrolled, and the certificated FTE was 18.4, and most of that are teachers, but we also have some support staff. So the total teacher FTE is 15.0, and then 3.4 support staff. So, and then we have some hourly classified as well, so.
Okay, thank you. So I think my only other comment would be what's been highlighted by some of the other trustees, that will we get a report back or update if there's been a significant shift in some of the funding buckets? So for example, if we find that additional funding needs to be provided beyond the $50K for the professional development support to support learning loss, and it seems to be more apparent that we need to flush that up to $75,000. Will we get regular updates, or how will the board be communicated on some of those adjustments?
I'll take that one. So while it might not be required to submit a new report to the state, we will bring the shifts back to you guys.
Okay. So I guess my last question is, are we giving direction to say we suggest to give $75,000 more for the learning loss? Is that the kind of direction that you're asking tonight to adjust some of the funding here?
The item before you is to approve the plan that was submitted.
Okay, the bullet also asked to get feedback from the board, so I was just trying to understand, is that the kind of feedback that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think you've been giving feedback in your questions, and staff have been taking notes.
Okay, well, I do feel that maybe increasing the number for professional development to learning loss seems a little small, and I'd like to see that increase.
So I would remind us that I believe the item, yes, it's possible action for this evening, but it can be brought back at the next meeting for approval because it's not due to the county until the 29th. So one of the things I would remind us of all is that the direction that we gave staff was to come back with this plan that would build on the other plans that we had already approved, what was in the in-person grant and expanded in the ELOG, and also to try to take the things that we felt were working the best and use the funds towards those, with an eye to things that we're seeing the greatest benefit to the students and their well-being and their mental health and their academic achievement, all of those things. We would then look at ways to incorporate that into our LCAP processes or other regular staffing allocations for future funding, because these dollars are very short-term and are not long-term. We're not, when we're saying we're going to be doing this, we're not saying we're going to be staffing the wellness center with these staff members on a permanent basis with these dollars. It's just not possible. But that we would take the learnings from these additional dollars that we're having the opportunity to put these supports in place and decide what things are really serving the students really well, and what those might go into the LCAP in the future, and some other things that might be there that aren't doing quite as good a job at our goals, we might reassess that. So I appreciate that, as someone who's going to have to review other districts' plans, I appreciate the alignment to the in-person grant, specifically where those things are and what the building on from the other plans is happening in our plan. So, if there is, something you'd like to say, you'd like to make a motion to approve with a movement of, dollars from one bucket to another, I mean, that's doable. Certainly, if we'd like to get it done tonight, as opposed to having it come back for a second vote, that's certainly fine. Otherwise, I think it would be good to just allow the staff to have taken our direction about these ideas that, we've talked about. Steve's interested in in particular in the wellness center support. You have some interest in the PD. Mary Jo has some interest in some additional supports on the school sites for yard duty and interventions, and see what they can do to move those back. And we will get a report, and we do have to provide the state with an update every 6 months. So I think that would be a way to go. So, Mark?
Yeah, a couple things. And just, we should realize, this is not the only funds we have to do these activities, right? So this is one bucket of money. And so I think the valuable input all of you have provided, and I really appreciate the boots on the ground. I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this. I mean, to me, that's really good feedback for them and for administration and coming up with funding for those types of things. So thank you for that. My one area is on the accountability side of it. And I do want to, I think it would be really helpful for us in the district to understand what are the goals of these funds, right? They really are to keep kids in the classroom. They really are to mitigate learning loss, things like that. And so while, all the measures that we have outlined there are good measures to have, they don't really tell us how these programs specifically did to, raise that. So I just would like us to think about some measures. My direction would be think about some measures that might be things we could keep. How many kids would we have lost if we didn't do, that type of thing, right? Those can be a little bit harder sometimes too, but I think that's the spirit of what they want us to do with this, is really show how these particular funds are making a difference. And so that's what I'd like to, that's my input.
There's no public comment on this item, so we're not waiting for that.
So as per your recommendation, do we make a motion to approve the plan with some of the modifications that we've discussed tonight?
You can make a motion to approve the plan with the understanding that the staff is taking comments into consideration.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the plan with the understanding that the staff will make considerations for adjustments based upon the feedback provided by the board tonight.
I'll second that motion.
Get you right, SB. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ESSER 3 plan with the understanding that staff has heard the board's direction for some modifications, and it's been seconded. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. Okay. I'm making notes. I know Lenita is taking excellent notes, and I don't really need to make these notes, but it makes me feel better. Thank you very much for that, and thanks for the work. Again, I know it's really been hard to be reflective in this last 18 months as we are been running from fire to fire to fire as things have been thrown at us. But that's, I hope, one of the things we're going to do as we move into the LCAP season is really start looking at what of these things that we had the opportunity to try are something that we want to keep and how we can try to fund it. So that would be great.
So the other thing I'll say, and I probably should have said it before you voted, is that we've talked about this in the past, about how you develop plans, you align plans, and you look for fundings to complete the plans, to do the work related to the plan. What you don't do, or what I'm not supportive of us doing, is writing a plan every time we get more money, and every plan's disconnected, and people are all scattered doing all kinds of stuff. And so the plan is important, and it is important that you noticed the work that the team did to align it to the LCAP and to the organizational goals, because that's a part of that alignment work. The other thing is, specifically to your issue, Steve, with the Wellness Center, there are additional grants that are out there that are competitive in nature. And so one of them has to do with mental health. So the state didn't just hand out the money related to that, but they're asking people to apply for it. And so the team is not just looking at those dollars that are sitting in the coffers at the moment. They're also looking for ways to write new grants, and that would be a really good example of something that might qualify. So this is not all the money, right? Mark said there's a lot of other buckets out there, but there's also other opportunities out there. And so part of our job as a district team is not to just sit and do the work that we have in front of us, but to anticipate the work that needs to be done and try to determine how we fund the resources associated with that work. So, thanks.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Pam. Item number 12B, report discussion and possible action on Number World supplemental curriculum for math intervention. Dr. Woodward.
Thank you. Number Worlds is a comprehensive math intervention program by McGraw-Hill. Currently, beyond reteaching and practice using our core math materials, the elementary school level does not have a supplemental curriculum that provides targeted Tier 2 and targeted Tier 3 intervention in mathematics. Director Galletti, elementary director, will be presenting an update and a report discussion, possible action on how the Number Worlds supplemental curriculum for math intervention could be very useful to us. Director Galletti.
Thank you, Dr. Woodworth. Good evening, Dr. Haglund, Board President Larson, trustees, executive cabinet, and community. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can start the presentation. As Dr. Woodward mentioned, Number Worlds is a comprehensive math intervention program from McGraw-Hill. And I'm excited to be here tonight to talk to you about this program because also, as it was mentioned, currently there is not a supplemental program that targets math intervention for the elementary level. Number Worlds would be utilized in small group instruction to build proficiency and confidence for students experiencing significant challenges in math. This evening, I will be providing a brief overview of the curriculum and materials, feedback from the summer school pilot, and asking the board to approve Number Worlds as a POSD supplemental curriculum for our elementary schools. Number Worlds utilizes teacher-directed lessons and games along with supplemental digital applications. Lessons focus on critical standards within the Common Core mathematical areas. POSD refers to these critical standards as our essential standards. These are standards in which students must reach proficiency in order to complete higher level mathematical tasks. Components of the program consist of leveled kits. On this slide, you are viewing the prevention levels for kindergarten and first grade, where the focus is on building number sense. For all levels, kits come with a teacher edition, activity cards, EL support guides, manipulatives, and game boards. In addition, student workbooks are available in both Spanish and English for both print and digital, and they correspond to each of the specific levels. The program is designed to engage students with interactive games and tools while utilizing formative assessments to gauge student progress. As we move to this next slide, you will see an overview of the grades 2nd through 5th and the concepts taught in each unit by grade level. Number Worlds would be implemented as part of our MTSS 3-tiered instructional model, in which teachers would use our core curriculum Eureka math assessments and our MAP assessment to identify students who are struggling in math. Once students are identified as struggling in math, they would be able to dig deeper and drill down by using the assessments provided in Number Worlds to pinpoint which unit and level to start a student on. To dive deeper into the pedagogy of Number Worlds, I would like to review the four-part structure embedded into each lesson. Students begin with a brief warm-up activity to build background knowledge on the lesson objectives, before moving into the engage part, where students then develop and practice the key concepts. Student reflection is used to help students think about their learning and apply skills. Finally, the teacher checks for student understanding through assessment. During the past summer school session, the elementary math teachers for both the general education and special day class programs used the Number Worlds curriculum. Highlighted on this slide is the positive feedback received from teachers. Overall, teachers found the program to be interactive and designed in a format that is very easy to teach. If approved, curriculum instruction will begin implementation of the program through professional development, which would be provided both to teachers and administrators. At the school level, principals will work with the team of their grade level members, their intervention specialists, and the resource teacher to identify students' needs, plan intervention groups, and the instructional times when this would be used. This process that I explained is consistent with the process we use in reading intervention. There are two combined purchases for this program. The first would be for summer school, in which 3 kits per grade level would be provided and reserved solely for summer school use. The second is for use during the regular school year. 2 kits per grade level for each of our elementary schools would be purchased for shared usage. 3 kits will be provided to schools with mild to moderate SDC classes, as they may have more students in need of math remediation. At this time, I'll close my presentation and open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Galletti. Trustees, you have questions for Director Sachi?
One quick question I had is, how many students would be using one kit?
So it's meant for small group instruction. So you're going to have about 5 to 7 students at the time, and that will depend on each school and assessment needs and what happens. Typically, when you're looking at a tiered model approach, you're looking at between 5 to 10%, possibly 15% after COVID year and learning loss of students who might need extra help in math in the targeted tier 2 or 3 intervention.
Okay, that's good. I was concerned that we're having like an entire class using like 2 kits.
I had the same question.
And this isn't meant for an entire class, and that's why it can be shared. It is really meant for students who are significantly behind in math.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Trustee McCaughey?
So thank you for the presentation. I know I sit on the Teaching and Learning Committee and had a chance to review the curriculum firsthand, and can attest to the in-depth scaffolding and breakdown of the content that will really benefit our students, especially with our current elementary curriculum may not necessarily be at the level for all of our students. I think this is huge. Very simply, when will this go into effect once it's approved, if approved by the board?
Once it's approved, I will place what we call the purchase order tomorrow. That will go through to the company and the order will be placed. My hope, and you have received updates on this, that what won't happen is we have trouble with deliveries like we have had in the past due to COVID. And my goal, as soon as it was placed, is hopefully we would receive materials within the next month or 2. Training would then start taking place in December, and implementation would be full-blown in January, pending that deliveries and everything go without a hitch.
Great, and I know I've asked this before, but I know this is currently being focused on to target our at-risk students who may be not at level in mathematics. Could it at some point also be used for our advanced learners at some points to, for example, if a child is in 3rd grade, but they're really more at a 4th grade skill level on a particular item, could it at some point be used for our advanced students as well?
I believe at some point it could, but I have two thoughts when I think about using it, not for its intended purpose. ELOG grant is funding this, and that grant is specifically to help students, as we mentioned several times in the meeting before, mitigate learning loss. And so this is an expensive program. We would want to make sure that it's going to the intended purpose of what the funds were for. With saying that, in looking at the program and pedagogy, it really is meant for students who are struggling in math. So I'm not sure it would be the perfect tool to help students who are ready to excel. We may want to look at a different tool in order to differentiate curriculum and challenge students who are ready to excel in math. However, once teachers and dive into the program and start teaching it, if they see that could be a benefit to help students who are ready to excel, then yes, it could be used.
Okay, great. And then can you clarify, will students be flagged based upon the math growth assessments? And is that the data that will be to identify the students that need the services? Or if a parent feels their child is struggling, could they put in a request? Or can you talk a little about the process of how the students will be selected for these services?
Sure, great question. Yes. So it's actually going to be multiple assessments. MAP will be the main assessment used in our 2nd through 5th grade for math. In our lower grades, we are using our Eureka math assessments, and so do 2nd and 5th grade. So it's looking at those multiple assessments and how a student is doing. And anytime a parent or guardian feels their child is struggling in math, the first step would be to talk with the teacher, find out what's happening, where they're struggling on, and to problem solve from that way. Then, when looking at the child's assessment, the areas in which they are having struggles with, we could then use the number worlds assessments to kind of dive down deeper into that to see where they could, for example, when I showed the slide with all the different levels, would they be needing addition support so that then they can understand the multiplication, for example, that's happening in class?
Great. I can't wait to contact my daughter's teacher and get some assistance. All right, very last question. I did ask this in the communication. So if I understand how I read this, it's for consumables for next year. It looks like it's only roughly $800 or so. So a lot of the purchases, it looked like the licenses are quite a few, 3-year license for the digital license. So am I reading that information correctly?
You are, and we are being conservative right now with our consumables because we don't know how many they will need, and so we don't want to overbuy. So the digital license is for 3 years. The consumables would be a yearly purchase, but as you mentioned, it's a very small amount compared to the entire program and the kits and all the material. That is actually what's the bulk of the program and what is costing the most. And so as we are working through the program, working through the principals and the intervention specialists and the grade level teams, because they all work together as a unit, they'll be able to really identify what consumable workbooks for which unit they use and what they will need to be ordering for next year. And then I will have an order in process, and we do this similarly for our Twig Science. We do it for our benchmark, which is our reading consumables, where instead of just purchasing blanket amounts, we look at what is actually needed, and then the schools can order it.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question. 2, Director Galletti, the presentation says that the training that's for this are going to be funded out of SDR dollars for teachers implementing the program. Which teachers are implementing the program? Are these going to be groups run by intervention specialists, or are these teachers who are volunteering to be trained and run the program in their classrooms? Who's going to be implementing this?
That's going to be a site-based decision. It could be an intervention specialist, or it could be a classroom teacher leading the math intervention groups. It's going to fall down to what are the needs of that grade level, when they're looking at the data, are they seeing because they're going to be planning both reading intervention groups and they'll be planning math intervention groups. The SDR actually will be open to all teachers who would like to have the opportunity to learn about the program. But working with principals, we would want to identify, especially teachers already know, they're already working. One of the things, when I mentioned this has been something we haven't had, this is a gap in our curriculum. Last year, I can't even count and tell you how many times it was shared with me through teachers, through principals, that we need a math intervention curriculum. And so as teachers have started this year, they are aware of their students who need this type of instruction. And so they're going to want to come to PD, learn about the program, and be able to implement it in their class because they know it's a need. The other thing I'd say is the training. We went through it before summer school. It was about an hour-and-a-half training. I've taught with a lot of different curriculums, and this is one of those curriculums that you can actually pick up and go with. It is scripted. Many intervention programs are scripted on purpose because they follow a specific pedagogy that is repetitive for students who sometimes struggle with processing, and so that they're able to understand and have a repetitive lesson that they're able to engage in daily so that the intervention is sticking.
So it will be available at all elementary schools for students who need it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Carrion?
I just want to say thank you that I know that teachers for years have been asking for this, and they've been doing teacher pay teacher. They've been doing their own stuff for years. So I just appreciate you doing this. And again, I can plug, this would be a great opportunity for additional aides to help implement this.
Good plug.
If there's nothing further, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve number worlds for, sorry, I don't have it in front of me. For approval of the purchase of this curriculum.
I'll second that motion to purchase this curriculum.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to purchase Number World supplemental curriculum for math intervention. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Math, it lends itself to gamification quite well, and so it's exciting to see some of this intervention coming down to the elementary level. Report and discussion on the 2020-2021 School Quality Stakeholder Survey Results, item 12C. Dr. Hagelin, I think.
This is actually going to be a presentation that reflects our return to the annual stakeholder survey following the pandemic, and it's going to be led by Mr. Cannon.
All right, so. Thank you very much, Dr. Haglund, President Larson, Board, Executive Cabinet, and Community. It is my esteemed pleasure to present the 2020-2021 PUSD School Quality. What? Oh, sorry. So it's my pleasure to present the our most recent results of our school quality stakeholder survey. Sorry, I'm having a bit of technical difficulties in pulling up my notes. Give me one moment. This was the first time that we have gone out to our community since before the pandemic. So the last survey that we conducted was actually in spring 2019. And
That's good.
So our goal tonight will be to kind of look at some broad strokes for the survey data. The full report is attached in attachment B on the board agenda, and it'll be later posted to our district website. That report is 200 pages, so we will be looking at a very high level and really looking at this as information, and just points of data that help guide our work moving forward. This survey, again, this was the third time that we conducted the survey. It was available to all families in the district, all staff members, as well as middle and high school students. And it looked at dimensions of district and school quality and climate. This year's survey data builds on our spring 2019 data, as I mentioned previously, and it kind of provides us with a guidepost and a lot of very helpful data for our work moving forward. So there were 7. We partner with K-12 Insights, which is a national, which is a national firm that partners with school districts across the country to provide benchmark surveys for school districts. They look at 7 major focus areas. We chose in the initial year to add communication and community building because we knew that that was an important area of focus for our community, and it continues to be. In spring 2019, we partnered with the Student Support Services Division, thanks to the leadership of Assistant Superintendent Adia Lazo, to add sections that addressed special education, Section 504 plans, and those sections were available to staff that were serving students with special needs and that had Section 504 plans, as well as parents of students that have IEPs and 504 plans. And then we also asked everyone where they get their, or where they prefer to get their news and information. New in spring 2021, we added sections that specifically addressed how our district collectively addressed COVID-19, the pandemic, and the shift to remote learning, as well as how we transitioned to the reopening of schools eventually in March. And then we also looked at instructional and program changes to try to identify what practices that were born out of the pandemic that were actually beneficial to our community and stakeholders, that they would be interested in seeing maintained in our work moving forward as we hopefully move to a more in-person environment. And I will say before we dive into these results, doing these types of surveys can be can be somewhat similar to going into, your doctor's office for a checkup. It can be uncomfortable. You step on a scale, they take your blood pressure. It can be uncomfortable, but you get a lot of really helpful information out of the process. And in this case, we went out to our stakeholders, our families, our staff, and our students. And one thing that I love about this community, and I learned very quickly, is that they have no problem in telling us how they feel, especially our students. So we continue to appreciate their feedback as we focus our work in the coming year. So again, the survey was conducted in the spring of 2019. It was open for about a month. The survey was translated for parents in Chinese and Spanish. And this year we compared results from spring 2021 to spring 2019. And it's just an important note before we look at the results. Since we didn't do a random sample, this was really open to anyone that wanted to participate in the survey. The perceptions and opinions should not be generalizable to all PUSD students, staff, and families. So this is a lot of information, but just a summary to the executive summary. In general, we saw that across the board, our students, staff, and community love their schools. And we actually saw increases in how they rated the over quality of their schools over pre-pandemic levels in 2019, which is pretty significant. The other opportunity that we saw was around feelings of having a staff member a student could go to for a school problem. Across the board, there was strong agreement regarding that statement. When it came to a personal problem, there were some evident deltas, which we look at as an opportunity. And when we consider the work that's outlined in our organizational work plan, I'm thinking about Goal 2 and how we support our students, staff, and families as far as their physical, mental, and social wellness. I think we're moving in the right direction there. Overall, folks felt that school's stance on bullying was clear, and that bullying isn't tolerated. We saw increases in ratings there. And the largest overall, when comparing this past year's results to 2019, we saw trends. We saw the way stakeholders responded improve. And that's across many, if not most, areas. The largest increase we saw was in communication and community building. You can see the data points listed on this slide. And that really speaks to our collective work. Everyone in this room, the town halls, the workshops, the special board meetings, the virtual meetings that our principals held, everything that we did to the best of our ability to keep our stakeholders and community informed and engaged. So that was really great to see. So moving on. Our participation, we did see a bit of a dip in participation overall. I think that in large part this was due to the fact that we had surveyed parents, students, and staff on a number of topics across over the course of the year. And we had also engaged them through a number of town halls. So I think at the end of the year, people were pretty maxed out. But we still look at this as important data. The one really exciting thing that I will point out is that we actually did see a pretty significant jump in the participation of our students. And I do apologize, as I pulled this up, I noticed that the participants listed under students, that's the total number of invitations sent. The actual number is 2,616, which does equate to 31% of students. And a big shout out to Pleasanton Middle School Principal Joe Nguyen. A lot of his Panthers made up a pretty large portion of that increase in participation for students. So thank you to our principals for sharing this opportunity with their students. So here we see how each stakeholder ranked overall school quality, and we see generally a majority across the board rate the quality of their school as excellent or good, which is great news. And moving on, let me see if this will work. All right. So this slide goes over the 7 dimensions that we were just looking at, that are kind of outlined in the national benchmark survey. The green bars represent parents, blue bars represent campus-based staff, and yellow are students. And when you compare the 3 stakeholder groups, these percentages do represent the average responses for those that strongly agreed or agreed for items within each dimension. We can see a number of deltas here, which we can see as opportunities both in student support as well as academic support and safety and behavior. And again, if we look to our guiding document for our work as an organization for the year, goals 1 and 2 in the organizational work plan relate to providing personalized learning and academic support to students, as well as improving and increasing supports relating to the physical, social, and mental wellness of all. So here we see for the parent respondents, the highest areas of agreement, and similar to previous years, but even more significant this year, we see families continuing to feel engaged in their school communities, as well as feelings that their school is a safe place, which speaks to the work of our pandemic services team, our school leadership, really the entire organization. You can see a number of other items listed here relating to school leadership, strong school leadership, as well as the feeling that students had knew a staff member that they could go to for a school problem. For opportunities for growth, for parent respondents, we saw our largest areas of opportunity around student support, enrichment activities, which naturally last year as a whole in remote learning, and even when we transitioned to reopen schools, we couldn't do the things that we typically do very well as far as programs and school events that are normally held that we know and love, that are thankfully starting to come back this year. We also see some opportunities relating to individual student support, which again relates back to those personalized learning experiences, as well as students feeling prepared for their future. So again, these are the 5 top areas of disagreement. We also have these SA and A stand for strongly agree and agree, and then these are the percentage of parents that responded that they just don't know. And again, another opportunity. So for campus-based staff, areas of celebration, there was some consistencies with parents and feeling that their students had a staff member they could go to for a school problem, feelings of safety and feeling like everyone was treating each other with respect, and also that students had a staff member that they could go to for a personal problem. And for staff, opportunities for growth, again, looking at data holistically, while these were the areas of the highest percentage of disagreement, we see the percentages of folks that responded strongly agree, and then the folks that just said that they didn't know. So we see enrichment activities again. I think that's a consistent theme, as well as we also see safety and behavior. All students are aware of the safety and security procedures. So moving on, for our students, our key stakeholders, again, student respondents felt like they had a staff member they could go to with a school problem. They agreed with a variety of academic courses. Shout out to our tech services team, because during remote learning there was a lot of that needed, and they felt like they got that support. And students also felt like they were generally aware of safety and security procedures. And for students, our opportunities for growth, compared to previous years, the top one being the relatability of what's learned in the classroom versus life outside the school, focusing on building stronger connections there. You can see we have a pretty high percentage of students that just responded that they didn't know. So I think that can lead to some important conversations moving forward. We also had enrichment activities pop up again. And I think that there is that kind of speaks to and reinforces the programs that that are already in place and that will be put in place with the use of the COVID relief funds. Some of those were talked about earlier this evening by Dr. Vandekamp, and that are being led by our coordinators of extended day, intercession, and many other things, Jamie and Shelley Hawkins McCrae. So shifting to our COVID-19 response, I'll try to go through the rest of these fairly quickly. You can see generally a majority of all respondents felt like the district managed the pandemic over the course of the year either excellent or good, which is heartening and pretty consistent with the feedback that we have gotten. These are individual prompts that were asked of parents, campus-based staff, and students. We have pretty high levels of agreement across the board, and there's, I think the one area that's slightly lower is the criteria for grading assignments and the explanations of those criteria. Still looking at implementation of remote learning, we can see pretty consistently that the lowest areas of agreement are around screen time and the amount of instructional time during remote learning, which kind of go hand in hand and again are very consistent with what we heard during town halls and workshops throughout the course of last year. So that's not much of a surprise, and we're very happy to be in person this year. And here we see almost 90% of respondents felt like their schools made the necessary updates to health and safety measures. And again, this speaks to all the work that was done leading up to the reopening of our schools last year in March. I'm thinking about all the blue tape on the ground, all the arrows that marked ingress and egress. So really great feedback there. As far as instructional program changes, we saw a lot of interest in the continuation of our PUSD community meetings. We actually held our first one virtually, as well as virtual parent-teacher conferences and IEP and 504 meetings. And just moving on to year-over-year trends. And I know I spoke about this a little bit at the beginning of this presentation, but you can see overall from the bottom when we started in 2017, 2018, we have the first 2 years we remain relatively the same. And we saw a little bump overall, and a pretty significant bump in folks that rate the quality of their school as excellent, which is pretty remarkable and impressive following a pandemic. And you can see similar results with campus-based staff, which is great to see. Staff confident in the quality of their school sites, and you can see similar trends for students as well. We had a little dip in 2018, 2019, and some large gains in this past year for 2021. And here you can see the seven school quality and climate dimensions comparisons over time. Green is our most recent year. Blue is the survey from 2019, and yellow is our initial survey. And you can see generally speaking, we've seen pretty consistent increases across the board. A slight dip in academic support, which is understandable and is going to be an area of focus moving forward. And kudos to our school administrators. We saw a huge jump in ratings as far as school leadership. And that was, sorry, I'm not sure if I mentioned, that was from parents. For staff, we saw a similar dip in academic support, but overall gains for other dimensions. Slight drop in family involvement, although parents actually rated that higher, which is good but interesting. And for students, we see similar gains, actually the largest gains across the board for all 7 dimensions of school quality and climate. As far as communication and community building, we spoke about this at the beginning, but here you can see just from looking at the bar graphs. The green is our latest year, jumps between of 20 and 25%. So really great feedback that speaks to the tireless work that's been going on and continues to happen across the district. These prompts relate to transparency and trust, and staff being responsive when our parents have concerns, and again, great to see increases year over year on those items. For staff, we see similar gains. I think we still have some work to do here. And we can when it comes to communication, we can always do better. So I think that's a challenge that we are more than willing and ready to address. And again, gains as far as trust, transparency, responsiveness when folks have a concern. But we still have some work. We still have some work to do. For students, we saw huge jumps from spring 19 to 21. Again, jumps that from 20 to almost 30% increases. For students, again, transparency, trust, responsiveness when they have concerns. Again, similar gains on each of those items. And then some key takeaways. So amidst the, we're technically still in a pandemic. Despite environmental conditions that we don't ultimately have control over, but can control how we respond to those conditions. I think because of that, sentiment has increased and gotten better. And there continues to be many reasons to celebrate. Definitely lots of work and opportunities moving forward. Ongoing conversations. These data points are meant to be a starting point to kind of dive deeper with at the district level as well as at our school sites, and what this means and how we can best address those gaps that exist. And then, as I tried to point out throughout the presentation, based on the deltas outlined in the presentation, that our goals and organizational work plan is pretty well aligned when considering our areas and opportunities for growth. And I think that's it. So at this point, I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Patrick. Questions from the trustees? Trustee Carry-On.
So thank you very much for the presentation, and I really want to thank everybody here, because I know you guys have worked really hard, and you can tell by the improvement. And so thank you, Dr. Hagelin, for your leadership, and Executive Cabinet for that. So two things I just want to ask. Number one, in the past, I know that teachers and staff have been able to take the surveys during school, and that was really helpful. Could we maybe continue to do that? It was like we had it during Wednesday afternoon.
Yes, yeah, that's actually something that we have that we tried to push for. I've heard a lot of schools both provide time to take the survey during collaboration time. That's also when a number of our schools actually take time to actually look at their school site reports to have meaningful discussions around different data points. And I know for a fact that our student participation, the largest increase that we saw was at Pleasanton Middle School, and I am super grateful to Joe because we did have, because we were in a remote environment, a lot of schools had had sort of a virtual hub that had links for students. So during access period, they could go, and our stakeholder survey was promoted by both teachers as well as listed on those virtual hubs.
Encourage that. Then the other thing is that there were some areas that I did see needed some improvement, and so I'm just wondering like how you're going to be attacking these problems. Will there be town halls? Will there be listening campaigns? How will we go to fix some of these areas of concern?
Can I tack onto that real quick? Because that was my question. So in those areas, we're just seeing this survey for the first time, the results of the survey for the first time, but you guys have seen it a little ahead of time. Were those gaps and whatnot used in developing the organizational work plan goals and objectives for the, I'm asking Dr. Hagelin here.
Yeah, if you kind of take the survey results and compare it to the objectives that staff assigned during the developing the organizational work plan, you will see a lot of those activities within that. So I think the answer is that we knew that a lot of these things continue to be issues. Although we see growth, we want to see greater growth, and so that continues to be objectives within the organizational work plan.
Just two comments. One celebratory comment. I noticed that during the pandemic, there was an increase in communication, and that was rated by the public, parents, and whatnot. I wanted to celebrate that. Dr. Haglin, the executive cabinet, and, the district made a huge effort, especially last year during a lot of the town halls, a lot of the questions that were coming up with the schooling changes. I think that's a great celebration, and the hard work and the efforts to be extra communicative during challenging times. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think that's a great success of the survey data. And then just another example of like an area of gap, there does show some data that, increased feedback for students on their work could be an area of target. And I'm actually excited to see that data because I think that's a definite area that I'm sure that will be targeted with the equity and grading work, and that will be one form to help improve that practice. And so I would like to highlight that certainly some of the areas of need that are being identified here, we have a lot of plans and initiatives to help tackle some of those areas. And so that's just an example that I saw in the data where I anticipate areas to help address that concern, for example. So thank you for the very comprehensive report, Mr. Gannon.
Trustee Bayani?
Yes, great job on the report. But a few questions I had. Is it possible to have this survey to some of the upper grades of the elementary schools? Because they have a lot to say. They are 6th grades, and I feel like they're just being ignored in a lot of these surveys.
That's always a possibility. Absolutely. And I think the recommendation, I'm trying to jog my memory from when we first started having conversations around doing this survey back in 2017. I think it was a recommendation to start with our middle and high school students who had more experience through the school system. But I think we definitely we've definitely learned, and I'm thinking about the student panel that we had before the start of the school year, that our 5th graders have a lot to say, and definitely love hearing from them. So I love the suggestion, and we can certainly look into that.
So the issue that guided that decision initially is that this is a national survey that's done at schools all across the country. And they only do those questions down to the 6th grade. And so when we implemented, we went with their recommendation. But they also didn't do 504 and IEP questions, and we added those. So those questions are only answered by Pleasanton Unified. So they can't be compared to the national norm. So the same thing would be true if we were to expand it to younger age students. They wouldn't be comparable nationally, but we certainly would track the data internally.
That's good to know. Another quick question I had is, do we have specific data based on each school site?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do. We do have school site reports. We typically, when we've done these stakeholder survey reports in the past, we lead with our district-wide data. We have shared those reports with principals. And then, following this presentation and making the district-wide results public, we will also be posting the school site reports, the school-specific site reports on our website as well, just for transparency. And we do continue to work and encourage our principals to kind of lead conversations around the data and what can be gleaned from that. And we're always here to support them in any way they need.
That's great. You also answered my next question. Thanks, Mr. Gannon.
Of course, we're used to being trailblazers, so there's no problem there.
Mark?
Just a quick question for Trustee Bayani. We saw by far the biggest jumps in, positive scores among students at a time right after they came back from basically remote learning, right? Do you have any sense of why we
saw that.
Are you talking about the jump from when we started opening schools in March, or the jump?
No, just in the surveys, the survey results, like back in 2017, 18, 18, 19, much lower in things like communication and all, all the items that Patrick showed, but much, like 30% jump in some cases in some of those things.
I have some theories about it. I was thinking that maybe because a lot of students just took things for granted, because we just had higher standards when we didn't have a pandemic, and now we're like, oh wow, this is so amazing. That could be something. Another thing is I do think communication has gotten so much better through the pandemic because communication was only done virtually, and I think we were able to use those skills we learned during the virtual communication to implement it more in the in-person communication.
It is kind of interesting. I had the same thought about people were just really, really happy to be back in school. But also, it's always been a struggle with virtual communication. Like we've heard from parents over the years that there's too much email. And we're getting too many emails. We can't read it all. And we'll say, well, we put that, we put that out there, and they're like, well, we get 5 emails a night from our teachers and the district and everything. So it is a balancing act between that and maybe because people were home, they had an opportunity to actually get through their emails and read them. I was kind of making a joke about it, but it is a little bit, not to take away from the successes of some of the improvement here. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it was a weird year in so many ways. And so, as we move forward with this year and incorporating that into the work plan, it'll be interesting to see what the survey will show for this year, so.
Yeah, so I think I have 2 comments for you, Mark. First of all, I agree. People were happy to be back. They just were appreciative of all the things that people were doing. So I think that appeared somewhat both in the parent and the student surveys. So we will expect some regression towards the mean in the next year. And with the students specifically, we did have, and the PMS became an outlier because they did their survey during the day. And so I would say if those results relate to any group of students specifically, it's probably heavier to PMS. So as more students participate, you'll start to see a balancing out of that data. So it's not about getting a 30-point gain. That's not really the goal. The goal is continuous improvement and focused effort, based on feedback from stakeholders. And so some years those gains may be 2%. Some years they may fall. Some years they may grow by 10. But our goal should never be to have, bigger lines. Really, it's about having better service. That's the point of that survey.
Yeah, and Joan, I appreciate your point. As a parent who has difficulty sifting through my own emails, we did, with that feedback in mind, we did shift to a new communication platform this year with Parent Square that allows parents, when we're using the platform most effectively, it's an app that I have on my phone. So it allows me as a parent to get all district, all school, and even teachers have access to it. They don't have to use it at this point. But it creates a single platform and one place for all of that communication to go, so it doesn't get lost in the inbox, because I know how that I know how that feels.
Well, and just the normal life in the before times, right? We were all running to practice and 3 different events and so we weren't as accessible to that communication that was probably being provided. But, we've all learned a lot in the last year and a half about work-life balance, and I do think that families are grateful for the communication and the amount of availability that the district, made progress on during the pandemic. So just from hearing from other communities as well as our own. So I want to thank everybody for the work that this represents. And, again, it's one of those things that I think you said at the beginning, Patrick, that it's like a checkup, right? You may not necessarily want to hear all the things that people need to say, but it's really important to hear them so that you can work on them. So anyway, was there anything else on that? Otherwise, we will move on. Thank you very much on that. That was not an action item. Now on to 12D, report discussion on the statement of interest as it relates to specific district properties to the City of Pleasanton as part of their 2023-31 housing element update.
Good evening. I'll take this one. As it was updated to the City Council joint board meeting on September 30th, the City of Pleasanton has engaged in their process to update their housing element plan. And that is going to cover the period of 2023 through 31. And what that requires is for the city to allocate locations within the city's area for about 6,000 units, and that includes from low income to moderate and above moderate income. And so it's an aggressive number of units that the city has to find zoning locations for. And it also provides an opportunity for the district as well, as the district has specific properties that are unused or underutilized. And so we think that this is a good time for some of those properties that the district has to be considered in the city's housing element plan. Consideration in that plan does not require the district to have to develop those properties, but it gives the district a great number of additional options that if they are considered and rezoned by the city, they would be going through the environmental process, the fiscal assessment process, and then would, if included and approved through that process, which is a very public process that the city will be engaged in, it will allow those properties now to be much more valuable to the district. And that value would then provide the district with additional opportunities and to look at its properties and its assets and to align them better with its needs. And so we've identified 3 properties that we'd like to engage the city with in discussions, and we've had some preliminary discussions, and the city has shown interest, but we wanted to make sure we seek a board direction before going forward. If we do go forward with this and the city goes through their public process and ranks those properties and includes them in that rezoning, that for the next 8 years, the district will now have an ability to utilize that rezoning options that would be available to it. It doesn't need to act on them. It'll give the district that opportunity for that period of time. And so we think that given the timing of this, it's very important for the district to consider it, because if it isn't aligned with the housing element plan, in the future the district wants to initiate something, it would have to independently work those approval process for rezoning through the city. So I'm going to put up on the screen and go through the properties that we have identified as potential considerations for this housing element cycle. So first, we've identified the current property of the district office, village, high school, and related areas, except for the Pleasanton Upper Playfield. Currently, that is actually leased out to the city for, I believe, a 30-year lease. And so this would look at this entire property as an opportunity to get rezoned for housing. It is ideally located, as we know, in a greater area that's close to the downtown with many houses around it. And so this is a property that we think that the district could then leverage. The district office and the village high school are on a site it's a dated middle school that's been converted to the current uses. And so we would have to relocate these, but given the increased property value the district would have many options within the business areas and other areas in town to find an appropriate location for the district office and other functions of the district. The other property that we have identified is an unused property off of Vineyard Road, that would been kind of referred to as the Neal property. Originally, when this property was purchased, it was probably looked at a potential school site for the area around Ruby Hills. However, all our studies both have indicated that there isn't the student population from that area to support an additional school, as we have Vintage Hills and Valley View close in that area. This is a little bit of a closer shot. The homes near that property are large property type of, they may be larger property sizes in that area. And then lastly, as an option, we consider that the large property at Donlin, which is about 19.5 acres, a portion of it, this is just a representative portion, but maybe 5 to 6 acres can be considered for housing as well. And so that's something we'd like the consideration. So this would, again, give the district options and opportunities to look at its assets and to have the highest value for them. It would also provide support for the city as they're going through their identifying their properties throughout the city for their housing element plan. So we think that these two issues coincide very well for some engagement with the city of Pleasanton. So at this time, I'll open it up to question and direction from the board.
Trustee carry on.
So has there been any cost analysis? Like, for example, if we sell the district office here and we would have to buy property somewhere else, I don't want us to spend so much more out of our budget than we sell this for. So has there been, or is that something that you do down the line?
So, at this point, I don't think it would be beneficial for me to, say, well, this is the value of the property and so on and so forth. But we have engaged, and we are talking to individuals who the district has engaged in the past in the commercial real estate market, and have been engaged with the city in the past in the area of land acquisition. And so the possibilities for this property and the value would provide the district a great amount of flexibility. I mean, the property of this district office as a housing project, multifamily, type of housing, would provide the district with a great amount of fiscal flexibility as it looks to, acquire another piece of property that would be more well-suited for the district office and or other services in here. And so that's probably the best that I could give, but we would go further into it in the next steps. This is just the initial step to allow those conversations to really happen, because without this area or these properties being rezoned, it's a very harder process to go through.
Okay, no question, just a wish, and maybe this kills two birds with one stone, but if we could somehow work with the city on, expressing our interest in having maybe some teacher housing at lower subsidized rates or something like that as part of this overall plan, I just think that would be hugely beneficial. So anyway, just throw that out there. But otherwise, thanks for the report.
Yeah, and that's a great comment. And David and I have had those conversations, and being able to do that, it opens up a lot of avenues for us.
Trustee McCaughey?
So my question is more about the district property. Is it my understanding that, if the board gives direction to have conversations or to move consideration for rezoning, are you going to have is the district going to have conversations with the city on how to rezone this area? Because this has a couple different options, right? It could be residential, or it could be mixed use, which is where you have business on the first floor and then potential housing above that, or conversations about just commercial. So I guess my question is the plan to just tonight give direction to consider rezoning and then come back to the board with the options for this particular area? Because when I think of the other two areas, it seems more of like a no-brainer that may fit more for residential and those where they're located geographically. So that's my question about this space.
So it's a good question. So what we would do with this direction would then engage the city and say that we are interested for them to look at this property in their housing element plan. And then that would then engage, well, what kind of housing? You know, is it going to be mixed use? Is it going to be, you know, kind of townhomes? And so condo. So that then they will then come to, in that process of theirs, they have a ranking process, they would then say, okay, we would zone it for this type of housing, let's say multifamily, or let's say townhomes or whatever. And then that would then provide the district to take the next steps in the future if it chooses to do so. There's a lot of pieces on this property that we have to think about. There's the maintenance yard, we have different programs, we have village, but we'd have 8 years, right, then to start to then engage in that chess piece that will have to happen to then do something differently with it. And that's what, I think that's what's so exciting, is that we can align it with this so we don't have to do that process separately. It gets incorporated as part of the city's overall housing element plan, and they're doing the EIR, they're doing the fiscal impact reports, and it's helping them because they have to locate 6,000 units. And if they can open, if they can locate 200 here, great. I'm just throwing that number out, right? I don't know how many units this would be, but it would help them and it would help us, right? Because once this property is rezoned, its value will increase significantly.
I think you may have heard during the joint meeting a few weeks ago them talk about that list of properties that get zoned, but they have no obligation to build on those properties. There's got to be a builder that wants to do that. And so it's really is about that first step of saying, here's a piece of property, this is what it could sustain, and then they can submit that as a part of their report. There's no trigger at that point for us to start a conversation or start planning or doing anything until we decide that that's something that we want to do.
Okay, yeah, that clarifies, because, I mean, certainly rezoning this area will impact how the downtown looks. And so, future conversations on, what specific housing and how that will be zoned will be really important to incorporate with, as already stated, it's going to be a very comprehensive process to include all stakeholders. So, anyway, that was my primary question. So, thank you.
And jumping just back on what Mark said, we have been talking for several years now about the desire to have workforce housing as a part of our solution, because we know how expensive and difficult it is to afford housing in this area, and we do want our teachers to live near where they work. That's best for the community, and so this is one way to try to provide that type of an option for our teachers.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I had a quick question. So when you're talking about the portion of the Dahlin Elementary School field, how much of the field are we going to rezone as something else, or would be rezoned for something else? Is it like, do you have a percentage or something?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So it's at 19.5 acres. Typically, an elementary school is in that 10 to 12 acres. So it's a super elementary school site. So we'd have to kind of kind of sit down and look, okay, well, here's where the field would best fit. Here's, maybe 4 acres, 5 acres that could fit, kind of work that out, those details with the city, and then come up with, something that would be a viable residential project, and then go from there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No one else? Okay, so I'm super happy to see this agenda item. Prior boards have been asking for us to move forward with looking at our assets and looking at the Neal property in specific, the district property also, And workforce housing was one of the things that we've attended workshops at CSBA on, how other districts have managed to do that. And so I'm very happy to see that you guys have moved forward, and the timing is great because the city needs to deal with their RENA numbers, and we wouldn't be trying to do this piecemeal and trading zoning for something else that they want when we can get this done, and it's still within our control. But it's the first step in opening the doors to the possibilities of what might be done. It's about the best and possible use and the highest value for the properties that then we can then use toward our facilities needs in other ways. So very happy to see it. So thank you very much for this work. I don't hear any other direction from
Just
the
hopefully they'll
board.
move forward.
Yeah, okay, so you're not asking for a vote, it looks like you're just asking for direction to submit the properties for consideration, is that correct?
Yes.
I think you have it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, 12E, this is report discussion of possible action on the resolution 2021-2022.07 to move the board election from at-large to by trustee area. Is Dr. Hagelin, you taking that?
So this is revisiting the issue that we brought forward to the board in late August. There was significant requests for revisions to the resolution, which we took back and worked with our legal consultants and the demographers to produce a document that was more supportive of the issues that were brought forward by the trustees. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sheikh Salami.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hagelin. And so, taking from where David talked, we had basically the August meeting, and then in September we brought back a resolution, and in that resolution, the feedback that we took and incorporated greater community input and interaction, consideration to current board members, and making sure that transition and that sense of the board members are representing the entire district continue. Having an approval of the mapping criteria, in website that's interactive and that allows engagement and feedback through the map making process and community meetings. And so working with our legal team and working with the demographer, we've tried to build those. William Tunick with DWK and David Katz with Davis Demographics are also available to answer any questions. And one of the things that I wanted to clarify was I have a tentative timeline in that process that I wanted to share. And one of the goals is to have this process completed in a timely way that allows for engagement with the community, but concludes it by the end of March. And some of the specific reasons to that is that we would need to submit it to the county committee, and so we have to factor about 4 to 6 weeks. And we found out today that we'd need to submit it to the elections office at the county by mid-May, because they have a 180-day before the election. So that's kind of a little bit about the mapping of why we're trying to conclude it in a process. This process already is beyond the 90 days that kind of we have that immunity from a suit, but we think that if someone were to kind of bring that forward, we're already in the process, and I'll let William talk to that if there's any questions. But this process that we've laid out, it includes heavy community engagement. We want to get the information out. The two public hearings on the pre-map need to be close together. They can't be more than 30 days apart. And then we have this interweaving of community engagement, mapping in person if that's doable, Zoom, public hearing, community engagement, public hearing, community engagement, and then finally the approval. So that's kind of done with a purpose to be able to have continuous information both from the community and the board as we built this critical piece of mapping and making sure that we get it right. So at this time, again, we do have our attorney and Davis Demographics that can help answer any questions that you have.
Questions? No.
Is there public comment on this item?
No.
Well, first I wanted to give my thanks to Dr. Haglund and Ahmad and the everyone else, the demographer from Davis, for all the work, for the updates, answering questions, addressing some of my concerns. And I really, really appreciate the amount of effort and time that has been taken place to do that. And I wanted to express that sincerely. I put a lot of thought into this. I've talked to a lot of city council members and board members where this has taken place. And I've heard the positives and why it needs to be done. And so I wanted to reiterate that I do believe that this needs to be done. I still struggle with the timing, and I have shared that, and I really struggle with that. And I think back to last year with some of the changes that we, as a board and the district, had to deal with in regard to the pandemic and changing with the state county and getting more information and having to change direction. And when this was brought up originally in August, we were not aware of some of the factors that have now come into play, specifically with the city having received a demand letter and that the city is having to move to district areas. They don't have a choice and it has to be done. And I know that they actually, sitting on the city PUSD liaison meeting and how the city manager even expressed that they had to make an extension for their timeline to make it done right. So it really comes down to, yes, it does make sense to consider doing this now. We have, 2 seats that will be open. So logically that makes sense. However, when we think about the other factors, now that we have our residents that will be tapped in to having to deal with districting into areas at the city that will be 4 areas, and it'll be different for the district, which is 5 areas, I think is a lot to ask our community. So to be more clear, when we think about our school community, it makes sense. But when we think about the greater good of our entire community and our residents, I think it is really a lot to ask for the timing of this. And so I still have reservations because it will be confusing, and it really resonated to me when the city manager was really basically pleading, saying, please consider the timing of this. So I really question the timing of this. And I want to be clear, it's the timing. There's always going to be seats open, or in 2024, whether it's incumbents or not, there will be 3 seats open. And so I'm still feeling to put a pause button and consider this in a year when the city has already gone through this process. We can learn from lessons learned. And I just really want to be honest that I really think we need to be careful and think about the timing of this. But that said, I do believe that there is merit for it, but we need to really take that seriously in consideration, because this will forever change the election process for school board members.
Mary Jo?
I have a question for the demographer. Is he out there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So I am really kind of interested in making sure that we have an interactive tool for making the map, because I really feel strongly that our community members need to be able to do that. Can you explain to me how that would work, and if you have used this in the past?
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to go on this. Traditionally, typically, in this situation, the demographer would make probably a couple of scenarios, which would be unveiled maybe around after the new year, based on the schedule, with the information meeting with the public in the town hall. There's a couple of different ways. One, if we are in person, or it doesn't matter, I could even be doing this like we are now virtually. I could have my computer available. People could ask questions, what if you move this and do that? And we have software live that I could operate that will actually see if this will work or this will not work. So that's one interactive way where we could have it in an in-person or a virtual town hall meeting. We also have, as Ahmad had mentioned, some online tools where you'll be able to, once, let's say, a scenario is up, be able to zoom into whatever area you want in the district. It'll pop up the population counts in each of the census blocks, because they're very small. You have to be able to zoom in. The numbers will pop up, so people will be able to look at the areas they could move. People can make all kinds of suggestions, whether it's in the form of a map or write-up or, suggestions. But ultimately, we have to make sure that the population counts in each of these new zones are, within a certain small variance. So sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But we do plan on having some kind of a tool that anyone, yourselves, the public, will be able to zoom in and kind of see what, if they move this area, how many people are moving and what the impact would be.
Okay, so let me ask you a clarifying question. So I want to know who exactly would be making the map. So if I decide that I'm great at map making, would I be able to make a map and submit it?
Yeah, you mean you maybe print it out or zoom into an area that you might want to see changed. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how the district would set up your map would go to, maybe make a PDF or you submit it to someone at the district and then it would come to me as a demographer. Or if it's at a public meeting and someone just wants to speak and say, I'd like this part of the community to be kept together or separate, any kind of suggestions. The concept is that we're supposed to, as a demographer, go and make the changes, see if it works. There could be multiple scenarios. I don't know how many will be before the board by the time this goes for approval. You could have as few as 2. You could have 8 scenarios, all being compliant, all working. You could have a map that you send to me that's perfect. I fit it in. Now it's a new scenario. So it ultimately will come down to the board to simply decide which of those scenarios they want to adopt. But anything we put in front of you should be compliant with the CVRA guidelines. And we have to also vet this through Mr. Tunick and his firm before we even submit it to the board to make sure that it's a viable plan.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, in that website, we plan to have an input form where we capture the data, and if individuals upload map scenarios and options, we will capture it that way as well. So we'll have multiple ways of capturing people's input, but we'll make sure that the data is available to them on our website so they can look at it and provide those suggestions.
Again, I just want more community involvement. That's what I'm after. I want to make sure that that I have a say. I don't want someone dictating it for me.
Sure.
So can I just ask one more question to follow up with what Trustee Carrion's saying? I do know some other districts have had a process where it might be a workshop scenario where they actually engaged community members, parents and residents or whatnot to actually help facilitate following the specific criteria to actually create the map specifically. So it's actually driven by the residents, or is that an option, or is it rather that we'll be presented with 8 different types of maps, and then they can give feedback to those 8 different maps.
So I think we've talked a lot about this. We're going to have a starting point. So the first thing that David has to do is he's getting the census. The census data has just been released. He's working it through. He has to build, how much populations are in the different zones. And we feel that we're going to bring some level of options that we see has worked, because we know some of the neighborhoods, we know some of the boundary issues, right? And then in those workshops that are interactive, that's when people they've seen it, because we'll make the information available in advance, and then they can start providing feedback. And with his ability to be working there as a workshop type of meeting, then he can kind of move things and see if it works or doesn't. So I think that interactive piece, both in the public hearings here and both in the workshops where people can hopefully attend in person or through Zoom, we're going to get that interaction. We're going to get that discussion. If people are interested and want to be involved, they can get involved. I think that everything that we have done, when there are interested people, we actually, are happy to and encourage them to kind of participate, to reach out to us, and to provide input. So I'm confident that we'll have that engagement.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to address the city thing a little bit. I heard from, folks that Nelson had made that request, and while on the face of it sounds really reasonable, I'm not inclined to want to wait for the city to do their process. Our boundaries are not going to be the same as the cities at all, because by the very fact that we're grandfathering, if you will, the 3 existing board members in their areas, and they're going to be grandfathering their city council members into their areas. It's just not, and we have 5 trustees and they have 4 city council members. The areas are not going to be the same. And I think that our community is smart enough and, to recognize the differences between the 2 agencies, and the folks who want to participate will participate. So, I don't want to sound too harsh here, but they waited for the letter. They waited to get sued, basically. We brought this forward because, I brought this forward because I felt that it was the timing, for all the reasons that we talked about and that you agreed with, Kelly, tonight. But one of the main reasons is the equity issue that is is in our organizational plan. It's in our goals that we're working on. This to me is one of those things. This to me is a statement. This is putting into practice what we're talking about when we're looking at the composition of our community and the composition of the agencies and the boards that represent us, and noticing the difference between the two bodies and the community. So to me, this was about us leading our community and our district forward in this process. And the fact that the city happened to get a letter that they didn't tell us about, which, again, I'm not trying to sound too harsh, but it would have been nice to have known that they'd gotten the letter. We're doing the work that we believe is important for our community and for our school district, and to have representative folks on our board that represent our community. So to me, it isn't, in the fact that they now have the letter, increases the likelihood that we're going to get the letter. So we could say tonight, okay, no, we're not going to do this. And the guy's going to turn around and go, oh, well, yep, yes, you are. Now you get the letter, and you have 90 days to do it instead of the process that we're talking about. So anyway, I hear what they're saying, and that from their point of view, the school district can be secondary. I've never seen it that way. The school district, in my eyes, is not secondary in this community. Our students and our staff are primary in this community, and we should be allowed to do the things that are the right thing to do for our organization and our school district. And if it works with the city and we can work with them, that's great. But I don't see us subordinating the things that are important for our organization to the city's organization.
Thank you, President Larson. I just wanted to clarify that, it's not, like I said, I believe in the process. I want it to be done right. This board historically actually has had representation of other demographics. It doesn't right now, but it doesn't mean it hasn't happened in the past. And, one of the pieces of advice that I was given by another board member was that regardless of whether we get a demand letter or we do it willingly, we're going to have to do a lot of modeling of good practice and behaviors of how, even though we're elected by an area, that we're representing the entire district. And that was why I wanted to have one of the changes modified in the resolution to clarify that. And I understand, it's not, for me, it's not a matter of just waiting for a demand letter. If we do get a demand letter, the cost is just a little bit more than what we would pay. And so I still feel, it seems rushed. And I feel even just waiting right till after the election and do it next fall, like I said, there's always when this came up, I said I still wasn't sure whether it's 2022 or 2024 is the right time. So, I think we both expressed our views. So, thank you.
I just want to clarify, I was on the city liaison call, and after expressing concern about the issue, the conclusion of the conversation is, can we work together, develop common communication strategies to make sure that we're communicating clearly about the process from both sides, the district and the city. And so when we left it with the agreement that we were going to collaborate together to develop that protocol.
I have another question. So it's about being grandfathered. I don't want to have to, in 2022, have to campaign. So would that mean that my area would not be up in 2022?
You're not up in 2022, you're up in 2024.
So my area would not be up in 22, is that correct?
That's correct.
Correct. Does the attorney want to address that question?
Yes, sorry, happy to do that. This is William Tunick with DWK. Yeah, the terms of current board members are not affected by the transition regardless of the timing. So all board members that are serving terms through 24 would stay on the board through 24 regardless of the timing of the transition.
So are you saying my area would not be up in 2022? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you remain on the board till 24. Whether or not which areas are sequenced for election in 22 versus 24, it's difficult to predict until we get into the mapping process and know where those areas are. That being said, the fact that we have, my understanding is we have 2 board members who do not intend to run in 22. I would say that would greatly reduce the possibility that we'd have issues with essentially out of sequence areas, if that makes sense.
So no, to answer your question, you are not at risk in
You're okay.
2022. You will serve your full term to 2024.
So just to make a comment, though, I looked at the fair. There's a website for Alameda County for fair redistricting practices, and they talk about 5 criteria. One of them is no favoritism for or against elected officials. So, the way I read that is by law, to not gerrymander, you really legally shouldn't be able to do that. So, but to the way I understand it, it is a matter of how you sequence those areas. But I do think we need to have our eyes wide open.
Just a couple comments on this. One is that my experience is, taking extra time to do stuff, if it's worth it, it could be worth it. But the fact is, the timeline is to me plenty long enough to do this. So I don't see that, and given the fact that it's, I think, inevitable we're going to get a letter if we don't do it, I think, to me, the timing I mean, it's as good as any other time, I think. The other thing, I was just thinking about this as a, and I'm not saying no anybody's wrong or anything. I'm just thinking about this as not a board member, but a resident. How much do I really care where these boundaries are? I mean, there's rules around equal number of people and all that stuff. So I'm just saying, I personally don't have the same issues you do, Trustee Carrion, on that whole angle of it. So I think we need to get going on it. It's the right time. We're not going to have a better time, I guess is the bottom line.
Steve's like, no, I'm not saying anything. Well,
Can I ask Trustee Maher a question?
Sure.
Why do you think we're doing this?
Why do I think we're doing it? Well, for me, when I look at the recent demographics of our city, of our school, and I realize there's pockets of different areas that have different people with different questions, I would like everyone to feel that they're part of the system. And I think the way it is now, it's not. It's not. Once in a while, we get some differentiation on the board here, but as a rule, we don't. As a rule, we don't. We get older white guys like me on the board. I mean, seriously. And maybe I would like to see some younger people of different demographics get on the board so that we truly live the model that we have and that we profess to do in our vision. And I think, I don't worry about the city and us doing it at the same time. That'll work itself out. Those who want to pay attention, know where to vote, they'll be able to do it. Those that wait to the last minute, they're going to wait to the last minute. And I can't change that. And they'll still be confused. So, I think it's time. I think it's, when I look at the park where I live, it is so diverse there. There's many different cultures there. When I look up here, I don't see that. When I I was at Foothill today, Donlin yesterday. So many different cultures going on in our schools. I don't see that up here. I see it in our cabinet, but I don't see it up on the board. And so it's, I guess, to put it bluntly, it's time. It's time we do it. It's just time. I would like to see a cross-section of different people up here. Then we'll get different views and things I could learn from them. Not that I don't learn from all of you, but...
I was just going to say.
This is, I get my foot out of my mouth here. I mean, I just... It's much like I have Sashi up here. She gives a school's perspective. I learn a lot from her, what she thinks and what she hears, what she feels. I think it's great. I think if I could do that with more people, it'd be even greater for our board. So I'm for it. And then, should we do it now or 2 years from now? Now's the time, and it just, I don't worry about the city. I like the city, but they're going to take care of themselves. We're going to meet, make sure they don't cross over each other. It'll be fine. I don't know if I answered your question, but...
Oh, yes, thank you. I got lost in thought. Thank you.
Well, if there's no further comment, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we move towards resolution number 2021-2022.11, proclaiming a local whoops, wrong one, excuse me. Okay, 2021.07. How come no one said anything? That's what I mean. Move to the board election from at-large to by trustee area.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2021-2022.07 to move the board election from at-large to by trustee area. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Kashi?
No.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. Motion carries 4-1, plus Trustee Bayani's aye vote. Thank you very much. The concerns that the trustees brought forward and were incorporated into the resolution, I think were welcome. And I look forward to the process as we move forward with that. And we have a lot to do. Next item is item 12F, report discussion and possible action on resolution 2021-2022.11, proclaiming a local emergency, ratifying the proclamation of the state of emergency by Governor Newsom, and authorizing remote teleconference meetings. Dr. Hagelin, or is this me?
Both of us.
Okay,
I'll start.
all right.
So as you know, the governor's executive order declaring an emergency related to the pandemic still continues. There had been an order to direct the return to in-person meetings, and AB 361 gave the ability for districts to continue teleconference meetings if they declared if they declared a local emergency in alignment with the governor, and if it was revisited every 30 days. And so this particular item is looking to extend that opportunity for us to continue doing our hybrid style meetings, which, you know, we are here with the cabinet in person, but the community has the opportunity to communicate via the Zoom connection. So the proclamation goes from the 1st of October retroactively through the end of this month. It would expire on October 30th, and unless we, at the second meeting in October, the next meeting, approved another 30-day extension, then that would mean we would all come back. And I would hope that, I think we do have some flexibility, I would hope that even as we come back to meeting in person, that we take some of the learnings that we got from our experience in teleconferencing. And I think that we have had a much greater level of participation from members of the public in comments because they've been able to log in and do that while they're still at home taking care of the things they need to take care of at home, and just come online when it's time to make their comment. And so while we want them to be able to come back in, we also want people to have the option to make comments from their home. And really the Brown Act is more about our physically being present and accessible to the public. It doesn't limit their ability to make comments remotely. And so we want to continue that process, or at least I do, because I think the level of engagement has been healthy, and I'd like to see it continue. So that's my spiel. Do you have a portion?
I have a little portion. So, you know, I really had hoped that they would permanently amend the Brown Act as a result of all of our experiences to continue to allow teleconferencing, but that's not what happened. This is the law that was passed, I think SB AB 361, just allows for us, but through 2024, by the way, to allow teleconferencing. You know, I hope soon that, you know, we could, once we can start allowing folks on our sites. You know, we're still under specific rules about who can come on to our sites and who has to have, you have to have, you know, vaccination, you have to be, there's a whole lot of restrictions about that, and we're not really set up to do that, and we don't have, you know, I thought a lot about this and about, well, could we do, you know, have limits to the number of public that could come into the room, which is what some other school districts are doing. But I was like, well, then who gets to choose who gets to come in the room? So is it first come, first serve, and then everybody who came down to speak on an item, we're like, oh, sorry, you got to go home, or call us from the car in your phone, you know, on your phone or whatever. So that didn't seem very equitable either. So I'm hoping that as, you know, time moves on, again, we have to revisit this every 30 days. I'm hoping it can be on consent, however. Okay. You know, we have to revisit it every 30 days to continue to allow the teleconferencing option. And as things open up again, and we aren't so restrictive about who can come on our school properties and our sites, we'll be able to adjust. So that's the long and the short of it.
Yeah, no, I actually had a lot of thought about this one because, you know, I really want to maximize access for the public. And So I was, and thanks for your comment, Dr. Haglund, about making sure that we can still do that even, remotely or whatever, and even if we do allow people in. So the conclusion I came to is that kind of, I'd like to be in person and have that. I think we have a kind of an objective marker we could use for this, which is when the county meets the requirements for, taking away masking, which is the 80% vaccinated and yellow for 3 weeks and all those other things. To me, that would be a really, strong indicator of when it would be safe to do it. Because I think there's still going to be people who don't want to come because they don't feel safe. So as long as but we still need to provide them access for, to make comments and stuff. So anyway, I'm supportive because of that.
Yeah, I think we do need to keep in mind though, Mark, that the indoor masking requirement for school sites is set by the State Department of Health.
Questions. Now, when you let people in, would they have to be vaccinated? I mean, that's my concern is I would hate for it to be a room full of people without masks, and I just want to make sure we're safe. I also want to make sure we're safe from like the bullhorns and the people disrupting.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you that comes along with the job. But yeah, that's the challenge for us right now, is it would be really hard for us to we don't really have staff who are going to monitor the door and check vaccination cards, and again, limiting, having physical distancing in our room. To me, the challenge with that at this point, this month, is the turning away of people who came down and letting some people who came down in, and how would we just determine that, right? So, in the past when we've had really big public attendance at meetings, it has happened a number of times. We know we've had to do satellite rooms where we've got closed circuit TV going, and then people watch from there, and then they come over here when it's time for them to make their public comment. So, I mean, as we move forward with this, as things get more opened up, I feel like since the law was written so that we can do it through 2024, as long as the governor still says it's an emergency, I would like us to ease into more of a hybrid model where we've returned to normal and there are people who can come into the room, but yet we still allow the Zooming call. Once the governor removes the state of emergency, I don't believe we would be able to use this feature anymore, unless they make a change. So we'll have to continue to advocate for a change to the Brown Act, I think, to allow people to come in on Zoom, which, really wasn't, when the Brown Act was written, wasn't an option. So it kind of needs to be updated for that. So that's my thought process on, otherwise, if we didn't pass this, we would have to be fully here in person with no Zooming. We're back to normal. So, really, I don't really see we have a choice at this point. But moving forward, as things open up, I would like to see us try to accommodate more of that hybrid where we can still allow people to Zoom in. Because again, it's like babysitting. You have, people who want to make public comment and they've got young children at home, and it was always a challenge to race down here to make public comment on the items that you cared about. So, and have to sit and wait till, again, poor John is waiting. He's at the end of the meeting again. But, so anyway, I think it's a good thing, ultimately. So that's the long and short of this resolution. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution 2021-2022.11, proclaiming a local emergency.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2021-2022.11, proclaiming a local emergency, ratifying the proclamation of the state of emergency by Governor Newsom, and authorizing remote teleconference meetings. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
McCaughey?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. All right. Item number G. Report, discussion, and possible action on the design contracts for the fire alarm upgrade projects at Alisal, Donlin, Moore, Valley View, Walnut Grove, and Harvest Park.
John, you ready? Okay. I don't hear John, so I'll take this while he comes online. So this part of the Measure I bond program has the modernization and upgrade of the fire alarm system, and we are going to begin with these sites for the summer of 2022. And so we're seeking approval of the architectural agreement with, let's see,
I actually have sound now.
oh, there you are. Well, look, I'll finish it. You can take the other one. The architectural agreement with SFA for the fire alarm upgrades for the schools listed.
I'm sorry, I was putting my earring in. Okay, I apologize, but I had a very funny moment for a minute there. So, you have any major comments about the fire alarm upgrades, or other questions for the trustee? No. And I didn't have my mic on. You know, I was worrying about my earrings. Masks are very inconvenient for earrings. All right, so seeing no questions, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the design contract for fire alarm upgrade projects at the said schools with SFA.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the design contracts for the fire alarm upgrade projects. Trustee Carrion?
Sorry, yes. Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Thank you. And number H, possible action on the ratification of amendment number 7 for the agreement, Robert Bothman, for the admin and library buildings at Leidixon.
Okay, John, bring it in.
Okay, thank you, and I apologize for being on mute earlier. This is a follow-up to the delegation of authority agenda item from the last board meeting 3 weeks ago for the Amendment 7 of Robert Bothman Construction. It's the site work portion, the last site work portion of the Leidixon project. And since the last board meeting, there was additional negotiations that actually led to a net decrease of $67,000 and change. So the recommended board action tonight is to, the administration recommends that the board ratify the lease for amendment number 7 for the leaseback contract for Robert A. Bothman Construction.
Questions? Comments? Wow, John, that was really short. All right, is there a motion?
I will move approval of the ratification of amendment number 7 for the agreement for Robert A. Bothman for the admin and library buildings at Leidixon.
I'll second that approval.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for the ratification of amendment number 7 for Robert Bothman, admin and library buildings at Leidixon. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Bayani?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. All right, that concludes our regular items for report, discussion, and possible action. We do have a new section on our agenda this time called Updates on Board Objectives and District Goals. And based on the organizational work plan, the incorporation of board goals in the organizational work plan, which we, approved, 2 meetings ago. If there are items that board members wish to report on specifically that meet any of these goals, we will be, as time goes on, the metrics for each one of those goals, like agendas for teaching and learning subcommittee or finance subcommittee or whatever, those would be incorporated. But if there's something specific that board members wish to bring up that they've either done or participated in, or that we as a board have done as a whole that meet any of those objectives, this would be the time to talk about that. Is there a teaching and learning subcommittee?
I can start. So last couple of weeks, I had the opportunity to visit my partner schools, and super excited. I was able to go to Vintage Hills and see the new playground and get that tour, and had a great visit with the principal at Harvest Park. And he's super excited to share all his data and analyses and plans that he's planning to do on Harvest Park's campus and what the students are doing. And then also had a update at Leidixon and all the updates on Measure I-1 and all the improvements and all the work in progress that's going on. So really great to see students on campus. And next week, well, I can share upcoming events, I guess, going to Pumpkin Patch at Harvest Park, and been invited to go to the fun run at Leidixon. So it's been really nice to get into the school, see the students in action, talk with teachers as well, and kind of hear firsthand how they're doing. So it's been really nice to see everyone in action.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Oh, I actually had a chance to go visit Pleasanton Middle School and Hearst Elementary with Dr. Woodward. I had a lot of fun. I made a lot of new friends who were in transitional kindergarten. They're very exciting. I learned someone has 2 cousins and someone has 3 cousins. I learned that Hearst has a really good recycling program. Like, I was quite impressed how they were sorting out all their recycling. And a lot of the kids are really good at wearing their masks, and they're quite young, and they're very good at staying at their designated lunch tables that we have in place for contact tracing. And at PMS, I got to visit a lot of the elective classrooms, and what was really cool to me was all these art kids. They're making the coolest of masks. Like, I was blown away. They were very cool and very impressive. And I also learned about how Mr. Nguyen makes the master schedule for the middle school, and it's massive and confusing, and I applaud him and all of our other administrators who make their master schedules. I don't think I could ever do that. PMS also had a spirit day on last Friday for Amador versus Foothill. They were like 2 weeks off. It's okay. I still appreciate it. It was very fun.
Mary Jo?
So I've been volunteering at the schools, and that's been very fun. It keeps me young. But we're also on the teaching and learning, and I just wanted to just share an update that we are revamping the DARE program. It's now going to be called the SCORE program, and I'm really excited about how they are correlating. You guys have done really extensive work on that, and it's going to be great.
That's great. We have gotten some emails from the community about what's happening with that, and so I know the communication has been going out, but if we could mention it again, talk about a little bit about it, it would be great to let people know. So, anyone else?
I was just I created a little scorecard here so we could kind of see, but it is fun to kind of map the agenda items, even today, to some of the items on there, which was kind of cool. The only other thing I would add besides visits and stuff, because Dr. Hagelin and I got to see the opening of the Fairlands playground and all that, but is our weekly call with the Alameda County Public Health Department on the COVID situation. Weekly. So, and I think all of us almost are on there. And Kelly French, of course, asks
all the questions.
Multiple questions, but which is great. I mean, it really, I just feel like Pleasanton's really on it. And, but we always learn something new about an ever-changing subject. And, heard today that looking like the childhood vaccines are definitely pretty close, and so and we're moving. We're in yellow, but it hasn't been reported in yellow. So for Alameda County, so that's nice.
Yeah, I normally am on those calls as well, but I was in an equity workshop all afternoon this afternoon, so I was not able to make it on the Thursday call. And I did something similar. Again, it's one of the evidence of our work is the work that we do here. Right. So in addition to all the wonderful things that you guys are talking about and visiting school sites and stuff, we're taking those goals and putting them into policy and putting them into action from the dais. So I think that's really great. Board requests and reports. Reports already got done, but do you have any requests? Yes.
Well, Trustee Carrion and myself went to the city district liaison committee, share a report about one of the items. There was only 2 items, although we took almost full time. But the DARE program, or SCORE now as it's called, is moving forward, and it looks like a very, very nice and comprehensive program, so we're very excited about that. And what was the other item we discussed about it? We didn't spend much time on it.
Only 2 days ago, Steve.
I know. I think it might have been about the, Dave, do you remember? The other, there was only 2 items.
Yeah, it was the city's report on their trust moving to
Moving
area.
forward.
I was going to say that, but I didn't really want to.
Shows how much I was paying
I
attention.
wasn't even there, but I do have a request. So I'm sure, like other board members, we have been contacted by Ramesh, the head of Cricket for Cubs. So I would like us to have an agenda item in the future talking about our ability to accommodate additional cricket pitches and/or working with the city for them to, I was just thinking to myself, gee, what's going on at that Upper Burnell field? So we can talk about opportunities for some of the fields and the places that we have, and anyway.
Can I just add to that? As part of the city, we're going to be talking about policy, and I'm going to ask about, because I think we can't have cricket if you're on school property, or I don't know, there's some policy.
Yeah, the policy is you can't use city grounds for school events. So that policy would have to be modified.
Yes, so we're going to be talking about that hopefully at the next city meeting.
Great.
I have one request. It's been a while since we heard what the update is on the dress code AR that we were working on. I would like to get an up, and that can be in a communique.
I have one requested. It may already be planned, but with Q1 just wrapping up, I know I got my kids' report cards. Would love to get an update on how our students are doing compared to last year, Q1. I'm sure we're going to see a big differential, but would love to get an update on that, whether it be a small report or communication. And thank you, President Larson, for bringing up the cricket request, because if you hadn't done it, I'm sure I would have been putting it in a request too. So, very, very passionate in response to our demographics. We have a big population of people who support cricket, and I know they've been spending a lot of time at the sports park. And really, I think we do need to have continued conversations, because as I understand it, as youth and students become older in middle school and high school, that the
So
field is
we'll talk about that. We'll talk about it when the item comes back to us. Yes. So just to let the public know, we are going to adjourn back into closed session. We have some items to continue, but there will be nothing to report out. And have a good evening, and see you next